Story 1, The Witness Seal. The reefer screamed like a living thing the moment my fifth wheel locked, a high, wet shriek that came through the frame rails and into my teeth. I was still in the yard in Joliet, March 14th, 2023, watching my mirror for clearance when the seal on the trailer door split down the middle by itself. Not snapped, not cut, split like skin. The red plastic strap unzipped in a clean line and curled away, and the little numbered tag clattered onto the asphalt like a tooth. Then the inside of the trailer knocked back. Once, twice, 3 times like someone testing the door from the other side. I hadn't even pulled out of the gate yet. My dispatch text buzzed again: do not break seal, do not open. If seal fails, continue route, no exceptions. The reefer unit dropped from 34 to 29 in a single breath. The air around my cab went sour, like copper pennies warmed in a fist. I tasted blood and realized my gums were bleeding. I put it in gear anyway, because that's what you do when the load is hot and the clock is hotter. I rolled onto I-80 with the seal tag, still sitting in my cup holder like it had always belonged there. I'm Robert Hayes, 41, out of Peoria. I run refrigerated, mostly meat and pharma, the boring stuff that never makes stories. I don't drink on the road. I don't pick up hitchhikers. I don't play hero. I'm the guy who checks his tires with a mallet, who knows exactly what his trailer weighs because he scales twice, who can tell a bad wheel bearing by the smell of it before it cooks. And none of that mattered that night, because I hauled something that didn't want to be hauled. The paperwork called it biological samples, non-hazardous, which is the kind of lie you can smell if you've ever hauled real hazmat. The BOL had too many redactions. The shipper's name was a shell, an address that mapped to a self-storage place with a fake office front. And the seal number on the manifest didn't match the number stamped on the tag that fell into my hand like a confession. I should have refused. I should have rolled the tandem pins, dropped the trailer, and walked away. Instead, I merged westbound and watched the sky turn the color of bruised steel. Snow threatened, but never fell, just hung low and heavy like it wanted to smother the world slowly. The knocking started again at mile marker 246. Not the trailer door this time. My passenger side sleeper wall, right behind the seat, 3 quick taps like someone inside my cab was signaling from behind the paneling. I jerked my eyes over. The sleeper curtain fluttered even though my windows were up and the HVAC was off. The smell in the cab sharpened, metallic and sweet. Something cold touched the back of my neck. I checked my passenger seat. Empty, floorboard, empty dashboard. The seal tag sat in the cup holder, red plastic, white numbers, dry, clean, innocent looking. Tap, tap, tap. Not loud, just close. I told myself it was the reefer vibration, the trailer flexing, my mind looking for patterns because I'd been up since 3:10 a.m. and caffeine makes ghosts out of normal noises. I cranked the radio. Static. The station that had been playing classic rock dissolved into a hiss that sounded too much like breathing. Dispatch called at 9:17 p.m. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, an area code from nowhere I could place. Hayes, I said, jaw tight. A woman's voice came through, calm and practiced like she was reading a script in a clean room. Do you still have the witness seal? My stomach flipped. What? The witness seal, the red tag, is it in your possession? I glanced at the cup holder without meaning to. Yeah, it broke. It did not break, she said, and the way she said it made my skin goose. It released. That is a compliance event. You will continue. You will not stop for inspection. You will not answer questions at weigh stations. If you are pulled, you will say you have a refrigeration fault and you are looking for the nearest service plaza. Do you understand? I swallowed. My throat felt rough like I'd been chewing sand. Who is this? Silence, then a faint sound like something scraping glass. You are the carrier. You do not need to know the client. I'm not running illegal, I snapped, surprising myself with the heat of it. My CDL. You are running alive, she cut in softly. That is the only category that matters tonight. The line went dead. At mile marker 247, the reefer unit kicked again, harder, and my steering wheel went momentarily light in my hands like the tires lost contact with reality. The road and my headlights seemed to ripple, the painted lines bending like they were drawn on wet paper. I blinked hard, it straightened. In my mirror, the trailer's reflective tape looked wrong. Not crooked, wrong like it spelled something if you stared long enough. My eyes tried to make letters out of the red and white pattern. My head began to ache behind my eyes, a pressure boot, yielding like a sinus infection. Tap, tap, tap. The sleeper wall, closer now, hungry. I reached behind my seat and slapped the panel hard. Knock it off. My hand came away stinging. The panel was colder than it should have been, like touching metal left outside in winter. A shiver slid up my arm and into my shoulder, and for a second I had the vivid certainty that something on the other side of that wall had leaned toward my touch and pressed back. I drove faster. You don't speed in a rig unless you're stupid or scared. I was scared, and that's its own kind of stupid. When the first way station sign came up, my heart began to hammer. Open, I could see the green light like an eye in the distance. My hands sweated against the wheel. My reefer temp read 27 now, then 26, falling too fast for any sane unit. A trooper sat angled by the ramp, headlights off. As I approached, his roof bar strobed once, just once, white, blue, white, a blink like a warning. My phone buzzed again, no ringtone, just that dead vibration on the dash. A text from an unknown number. Do not enter way. I should have had no choice. Open station means you pull. You don't gamble your license. But my gut tightened like a fist around my spine. The smell of pennies thickened, and I realized I couldn't hear the engine properly anymore, like cotton had been stuffed in my ears. The trooper stepped out into the ramp lane. He raised one arm, palm out, a slow stop gesture. In my mirror, the trailer door handles twitched. Just a twitch, like someone had grabbed them from inside and let go. The reefer screamed again, and the sound came through my bones. My vision fuzzed at the edges. The trooper's face, as he got closer, didn't resolve correctly. It was like my brain refused to render it. I made the decision the way you make decisions when you're about to crash. Instinct, no time. I stayed in the travel lane and rolled past the ramp, pretending I hadn't seen the sign, pretending I hadn't seen him. The trooper sprinted after my cab, impossibly fast in the dark. He slapped the passenger door hard enough to make the whole rig shake. I saw his mouth moving, shouting words I couldn't hear. Then his eyes met mine through the glass, and I understood why my brain wouldn't render his face. Because it wasn't a face. It was a blur of features that kept rearranging. Nose where an ear should be, teeth in a line too long, skin folding and unfolding like a pale glove being shaken out. It was trying on the idea of a man and failing. My stomach lurched. I tasted bile. The thing smiled anyway, like it knew the shape of that expression and not the reason for it. I blew through, heart smashing against my ribs, Jake brake rattling as I corrected my speed. In my mirror, the trooper stopped at the shoulder and lifted a hand to his throat like he was choking. His body shuddered, then sagged, then did something that made my hands go numb on the wheel. His outline flattened, as if someone had pressed him between two panes of glass. He thinned into a strip of dark fabric. The strip fluttered once, twice, and then snapped sideways into the ditch like it had been yanked on a string. I stared until my eyes burned. Tap, tap, tap. Now it was from the floor. My cab floorboard, right under my feet. 3 taps like someone under the truck was knocking on the underside with knuckles. That's not possible at highway speed. That's not anything. I forced myself to breathe through my mouth because the air smelled like wet iron. My hands shook. I told myself I was hallucinating, that the stress and the cold and the strange phone call had lit up old primitive circuits in my head. Then my dashboard clock changed. It had been 9:24 p.m. It rolled backward to 9:03 p.m., the numbers flipping with a calm mechanical certainty, as if time itself had missed a gear. My radio static shifted. A voice emerged, faint under the hiss. Robert Hayes. My grip tightened until my knuckles ached. Who is that? The voice continued, clearer now, like the station was tuning itself. You have the seal, don't you? It was my voice. Not a recording, not an echo. My voice speaking words I hadn't said yet, with a tremor in it that made my throat constrict. If you're hearing this, you already passed the first station. My skin crawled. I slapped the radio off. Silence flooded in, thick and heavy, and with it came another sound, subtle but unmistakable. A breathing. Not mine. Behind the sleeper curtain. I looked, and the curtain bulged outward slightly, as if something behind it leaned forward, close enough to press fabric. The outline was wrong. Too tall, too narrow, shoulders hunched like a praying mantis trying to pretend it had a spine. I didn't stop. Stopping is what you do when you want to meet what's chasing you. My phone buzzed, another text. You are late. I glanced at the clock. It read 8:51 p.m. My mouth went dry. Late for what? The reply came instantly. For yourself. The reefer temp hit 24, froze. Tea began to form along the lower edge of my windshield on the inside, a thin white lace crawling upward. My breath fogged even though the vents were blowing warm. The cold wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from behind me, from the trailer, from whatever was cooling my load with a hunger that didn't care about physics. I took the next exit, not because I planned to stop, but because I needed light, witnesses, something that anchored reality. A truck stop sign promised diesel, showers, hot food, the normal holy trinity of the road. The lot was half full. Sodium lamps cast everything in a sick orange. I rolled past idling rigs, past a line of reefers humming like a choir. I saw men in hoodies smoking by a trash can, saw a woman walking a small dog in the gravel median. Normals. I pulled into a spot near the far edge, away from the building, because some part of me still believed in space, in distance. I set the brakes. The air released with a sigh. Silence. Then the trailer door knocked from the inside. Hard. One air that shook the whole rig. The dog across the lot began barking, high and frantic. The woman yanked on the leash and hurried away, looking over her shoulder like she'd felt eyes on her. The hoodie guys stopped talking. One of them turned his head slowly toward my trailer, cigarette glowing. I sat frozen, listening. Knock, knock. A slow rhythm now, like a heartbeat trying to sync with mine. I grabbed my flashlight and my tire thumper because I didn't have anything else. I climbed down, boots hitting asphalt that felt slightly sticky, like it had been warmed by breath. The air outside smelled cleaner, but the metallic sweetness still threaded through it. As I walked toward the trailer, the reefer's scream softened into a low moan. The red seal tag was in my pocket now, pressed against my thigh like a cold finger. I hadn't even realized I'd put it there. My trailer doors looked normal at first glance. White paint, reflective tape, hinges. But the metal latch had frost on it, thick enough to look like fur. The frost was growing outward from the handle, creeping like mold. I raised my flashlight and swept the beam across the door seam. There was a thin line of dark liquid seeping out, slow as sap. It ran down the door in a straight line. It wasn't red, it wasn't brown. It was clear. And it smelled like formaldehyde and pennies and something else, something human. Behind me, one of the hooded guys called out, "You all right, driver?" I didn't answer. My tongue felt glued to my teeth. I crouched because the line of liquid led down to the bottom gasket. There, at the seam, the rubber bulged outward slightly, as if something inside pressed it. A whisper came through the seam, a thread of sound so soft it could have been air escaping. "Rob." My stomach dropped. Nobody calls me Rob out here, not dispatch, not receivers, not strangers, only my sister, and she hadn't spoken to me in 4 years. The whisper grew. "Rob, open it, I'm cold." I stood up fast, back scraping the door. My flashlight beam jerked upward, catching the reflective tape. For a second, the pattern looked like letters again, and this time my mind snapped them into place before I could stop it. "Witness." The tape on the door wasn't just tape. It was a sentence. The hoodie guy started walking toward me, cautious now. "Hey, man." The trailer door handle moved. Not a twitch. A deliberate turn, slow, as if a hand inside gripped it and tested the resistance. I stumbled back. "Don't come closer." He froze, confusion shifting to annoyance. "What's your problem?" The handle turned again, farther. The latch mechanism clunked. The door seal groaned like something being peeled apart. My lungs seized. I reached for the handle without thinking, to stop it, to keep it shut, because whatever was in there couldn't come out. The metal was so cold it burned. My skin stuck for a second, then tore free, leaving a wet sting. The latch snapped back into place, but the seam had opened a fraction of an inch. A breath spilled out. It wasn't cold air. It was the warm, damp breath of a crowded room, full of body heat and rot and too many exhalations trapped together. It washed over my face, and I gagged. In that breath, I heard voices. Not one. Dozens, layered, overlapping, whispering the same phrase in different tones like a chant. "A witness, a witness, witness." The hoodie guy backed away on his own now, eyes wide. "What the hell is that?" The seam widened another hair. Something slid into view at the crack, a pale curve like the edge of a shoulder pressing outward. Skin the color of wax. No hair, no pores, just smooth, featureless flesh. Then it flexed, and I realized it wasn't a shoulder. It was a face with no features, pushing itself against the crack like dough rising. My stomach heaved. I stumbled backward and nearly fell. The flashlight beam danced, catching the woman with the dog now running toward the building, dog yelping, leash taut. The hoodie guy turned. ND sprinted away without another word. I stood alone in the orange light, with my trailer trying to open itself. My phone buzzed again. I didn't want to look, but I did. A photo. It was my cab interior, taken from behind my driver's seat, looking forward over my shoulder. The angle was wrong, too high, as if the camera hovered near the sleeper ceiling. In the photo, I was outside by the trailer, flashlight raised. And in the driver's seat, my hands were on the wheel. My own face stared out through the windshield, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. The timestamp on the photo read 8:12 p.m. My knees went weak. I looked at my cab. The driver's side window was dark, no movement. I looked back at the phone. Another text arrived beneath the photo. You can't haul a witness and stay singular. The trailer door handle jerked hard. The latch clunked again. The seam opened to 2 inches. A hand emerged. Not a human hand. Too many knuckles. Fingers too long, jointed wrong, skin smooth and pale as the faceless thing. It hooked around the edge of the door and pulled. The door creaked, metal protesting. I did the only desperate, believable thing my brain could find. I ran. Not away from the truck stop, toward the cab, toward the only weapon I had, motion. I climbed in, slammed the door, and released the brakes in one sequence so fast I didn't feel my own hands. The rig lurched forward as the trailer doors banged behind me, something slamming against them from inside. I didn't care about parking lot rules. I didn't care about other trucks. I rolled over a curb, gravel popping under my tires, and aimed for the exit. In the mirror, I saw the trailer swing out. Just a crack. Enough to spill darkness that wasn't the night. Darkness thick as oil, pouring out and trailing behind like smoke. The reefer unit's scream turned into laughter. I know it sounds insane, but it had rhythm. A wet chuckle that rose and fell like a throat working. I hit the on-ramp, tires squealing, emerged back onto the highway like I was fleeing a fire. The darkness behind my trailer didn't disappear in the wind. It clung. It stretched, it followed. My radio snapped on by itself. My voice again, shaking, speaking from the speakers with intimate clarity. Don't stop at the truck stop. Don't look at the photo. Don't. The sentence cut off. A different voice slid in underneath, a chorus made of too many mouths. Witness, it whispered. Witness what you carried. Witness what you are. My dashboard clock lurched forward, skipping minutes like a scratched DVD. 9:10, 9:47, 10:03, then back to 9:22. The highway sign ahead read I-80 West, the familiar green rectangle. Then it blinked, and now it read I-80 Witness. I squeezed my eyes shut for half a second, opened them, and the sign still said Witness. My throat tightened so hard I could barely breathe. No, that's not real. The road ahead began to change. The reflective lines elongated, stretching like taffy. The mile markers appeared closer together, counting down too fast. 250, 249, 248. The numbers slid backward as if I was traveling the wrong direction without turning around. In my mirror, the trailer doors were no longer fully closed. One hung slightly ajar, flapping in the wind, but not enough to spill cargo. Enough to let something inside watch. Something pale pressed against the gap. My own face, I realized with a nausea that nearly blacked me out. It was my face, but smoother, too perfect, eyes too dark. It grinned at me from the trailer as if it found my terror funny. I looked forward again, hands trembling, because if I kept looking back I'd crash, and then whatever was in that trailer would have no more need for a driver. My phone buzzed one last time. The call. The ID showed my own number. I answered because not answering felt worse. I heard my breathing on the line, then a whisper, close, intimate, as if the speaker's mouth was pressed to my ear. Robert, my voice said, You're doing great. Keep driving, keep making distance. Relief hit me so hard I almost cried. Am I? You're the one outside, my voice continued, cheerful now. I'm the one inside, we just need to trade places. The sleeper curtain behind me bulged forward, slow, like something rising from the mattress. A cold hand settled on my shoulder, heavy, familiar. My own hand. I didn't scream. Screaming wastes air. I just drove, eyes burning, as my reflection in the mirror smiled wider from the trailer door gap, and the road ahead stretched into a green sign that promised nothing but the same word, over and over, like a sentence you can't appeal. Witnesses. When I finally reached the receiver in North Platte, there was no building where the address should have been, just an empty slab of concrete and a row of loading docks cut into a low hill like scars. No lights, no workers, just a single open bay door breathing warm, damp air. My dispatch text arrived as I backed in, hands numb on the wheel. Deliver yourself. And W. I set the brakes, the knocking stopped, because whatever was inside the trailer wasn't knocking anymore. It was already unbuckling my seatbelt from behind, patient as my own hands, rehearsed as my own habits, ready to finish the route I'd started. The last thing I saw in my side mirror was the red witness seal tag swinging from the trailer latch like a dangling tongue, numbers gleaming white, as if it had been waiting for someone to read them out loud and make them true. Story 2, the mile marker that counts backward. The numbers were decreasing, and that's when Marcus Webb knew something had broken in the universe. Mile marker 487, then 486, then 485. He'd been driving east on I-80 through Nebraska for 6 hours, and the markers had been climbing normally until 10 minutes ago when they suddenly reversed. His odometer still climbed forward. His GPS still showed him moving east. But those green reflective signs kept counting down, and his chest had gone tight with a fear he couldn't name. Marcus had been hauling refrigerated pharmaceutical loads for biochem transport for 11 years. He knew every stretch of I-80 from Sacramento to New York, knew which rest stops had the cleanest showers, which way stations actually pulled trucks over, which mile markers meant he was exactly halfway through his shift. Mile marker 485 should have been 200 miles behind him. He passed it around noon, and now at 6:47 p.m. he was passing it again, but backward, and the sun was setting in the wrong direction. The sun was setting in the east. Marcus pulled his eyes from the crimson sun sinking into his windshield and focused on the road. His hands were sweating inside his gloves. The reefer unit hummed behind him, keeping his cargo at exactly 38 degrees Fahrenheit, insulin shipments, time-sensitive, worth $1.3 million. He delivered this route 47 times. Nothing had ever been wrong. The road had always followed the rules. Mile marker 484 flashed past, then 483. He grabbed his CB radio. "Breaker, breaker, this is Red Phoenix. Anyone got their ears on?" Static answered. "I-80 eastbound, anyone reading?" More static, but underneath it something else. A rhythmic pulse like a heartbeat, like breathing. Marcus released the transmit button. The breathing sound continued. His phone showed no signal, which wasn't unusual in rural Nebraska. But when he looked at the screen, his GPS showed his truck icon sitting perfectly still on I-80, frozen at mile marker 489, while the landscape rushed past his windows at 70 miles per hour. The clock on his dashboard read 6:47 p.m. It had read 6:47 p.m. when he first noticed the mile markers reversing. He stared at it for 60 seconds, counting in his head. The numbers never changed. Mile marker 482. The sun had nearly touched the eastern horizon now, bleeding red light across the empty plains. There were no other vehicles. Marcus hadn't seen another car, truck, or even headlights in the opposite lanes for 15 minutes. The road stretched perfectly straight in both directions, vanishing into empty distance, and he was alone on it, moving backward through mile markers while time stood still at 6:47 p.m. He pressed the brake. His speed dropped to 60, 50, 40. The mile markers kept coming. 481, 480. He pressed harder. 20 miles per hour. 10. The markers still approached at the same rate, passing every few seconds. He slammed the brake to the floor and his truck shuddered to a complete stop, air brakes hissing. The road vibrated beneath him. Mile marker 479 approached from ahead, slid past his window, receded behind him. He was stopped, and the mile markers were still moving. Marcus put the truck in park, pulled the red air brake knob, and sat with his engine idling and his hands shaking on the wheel. Through his driver's side mirror, he watched 478 approach from what should have been behind him but was somehow ahead, sliding past like the world was on a conveyor belt, and only he remained stationary. The sun continued setting in the east, now half disappeared below the horizon, and the light it cast was wrong, too red, too thick, like the air had turned to cherry syrup. He'd been driving professionally since 2012. He'd driven through blizzards, tornadoes, black ice, wildfires. He'd handled blown tires at 70 miles per hour, jackknifing trailers, brake failures on mountain grades. He'd trained himself to stay calm, to solve problems mechanically. But this wasn't a mechanical problem. This was wrongness at a fundamental level, and his brain kept stuttering against it like an engine trying to turn over in sub-zero temperatures. Mile marker 477. He reached for the door handle. Maybe if he got out, if he stood on the pavement, he could. What? Stop the earth from moving wrong? His hand froze. What if opening the door let something in? The thought came from nowhere, fully formed and cert. The truck was sealed. The truck was safe. Outside was where the numb. Burrs ran backward and the sun set east and time stopped at 6:47 p.m. He pulled his hand back. The door handle was ice cold. His breath fogged the air. The temperature gauge on his dashboard read 72 degrees, but frost was forming on the inside of his windshield in geometric patterns, fractals spreading like frozen lightning. Marcus watched it grow, watched the patterns branch and multiply, and in the crystal formations he saw shapes, numbers. The frost was forming mile markers. 476, 475, 474, spreading across the glass in ice. His reefer unit's alarm shrieked. The temperature display flashed red, unit failure temp rising, impossible. Those units had 3 redundant cooling systems. They didn't just fail. Marcus twisted in his seat, looking back through the small window into his trailer. His cargo was pharmaceutical-grade insulin, critical temperature controlled, and through the window he could see the cardboard boxes that held the refrigerated cases. The boxes were moving. Not shifting. Moving. Crawling over each other like living things, and the sound coming from inside the trailer wasn't the reefer unit failing. It was breathing, the same breathing from the CB radio, deep and wet and rhythmic. Something was breathing his cargo in and out like lungs. Mile marker 473 passed. The sun had fully set in the east now, but darkness didn't come. Instead, a new light source appeared ahead. A second sun rising in the west, but this one was black. A sphere of absolute darkness that cast shadows of light, that illuminated the landscape in reverse, making the sky around it brighter and the space it occupied a hole in reality. Marcus's GPS spoke suddenly, the female voice crisp. In 472 miles, your destination will be behind you. The icon on the screen was moving now, but backward, retracing his route in reverse while the mile markers in front of him continued their countdown. In 471 miles, your destination will be behind you. He was driving toward his starting point. He'd left Sacramento 42 hours ago, had driven nearly 1,400 miles, and now the universe was rewinding him like tape in a cassette deck. His hands moved without conscious thought, grabbing the key, turning off the engine. The truck went silent. The reefer unit stopped breathing. The GPS went dark. But through his windshield, mile marker 472 approached and passed, and the black sun continued rising in the west, and he could hear something outside now. Footsteps on the pavement, coming from behind his truck, walking toward his driver's side door. Human footsteps, except there were too many of them. A dozen sets of feet moving in perfect synchronized rhythm, and they were getting closer. Marcus's breath came in short gasps, fogging the air, adding more frost to his windshield. The patterns were spreading, covering the glass, and now he could see not just numbers but words forming in the ice. Mile marker 0. The footsteps reached his door. They stopped. The handle rattled. Marcus pressed himself against his seat, heart slamming against his ribs. The door was locked. The door was locked. But the handle turned anyway, and the door swung open, and the cold that rushed in wasn't weather. It was absence, it was void, it was the temperature of space between stars. He opened his mouth to scream, but the air was too cold, freezing his throat, and when he looked at the open door, there was nothing outside. No road, no ground, just darkness and distant points of light that might have been stars or might have been mile markers floating in an infinite empty space. His truck was suspended in nothing, and the footsteps were inside now, climbing into his cab, except there were no feet, no legs, no bodies. Just the pressure of their weight making his seat springs compress, making the cab tilt, and the breathing sound returned all around him, dozens of lungs inhaling and exhaling in his ears. The frost on his windshield completed its pattern. Every inch of glass covered in crystalline mile markers, and they were all zeros. Mile marker 0, mile marker 0, mile marker 0, infinite repetition. The starting point. The place before distance existed. His GPS flickered back to life, showing his truck icon sitting at mile marker 0 on a road that hadn't been built yet, and the female voice spoke one final time. You have arrived at your destination. The breathing sounds formed words. Welcome back, Marcus. You've been here before. And with a horror that came from somewhere deeper than memory, somewhere cellular and ancient, he knew it was true. He had been here before. He'd been here every time. The loop didn't start when the mile markers reversed. It started when he first got in this truck 11 years ago, and he'd been counting backward ever since, delivering the same load, driving the same route, reaching mile marker 0 again and again and again. The insulin in his trailer wasn't cargo, it was memory suppressors, TH. I kept him from remembering the loop, kept him thinking each run was new, kept him driving backward through his own past. His hands were on the steering wheel. He was driving again, though he didn't remember starting the engine. Mile marker 487 approached, then 486. The sun rose in the west, the normal sun, warm and yellow. His clock read 12:17 p.m. His GPS showed him heading east on I-80, making good time. Marcus Webb had been hauling refrigerated pharmaceutical loads for biochem transport for 11 years. He knew every stretch of I-80 from Sacramento to New York. He was exactly halfway through his shift, right on schedule, and everything was perfectly normal. In 6 hours and 30 minutes, he would reach mile marker 487 again, and the numbers would start counting backward, and he wouldn't remember why the sight filled him with existential terror. The reefer unit hummed behind him, keeping his cargo at exactly 38 degrees Fahrenheit. In the trailer, packed in their refrigerated cases, $1,300,000 of insulin waited to suppress the memories of 600 other drivers, all trapped in their own backward loops, all delivering the same loads on the same routes through the same reversing mile markers. All of them arriving at mile marker 0. All of them welcomed back. Marcus's phone showed full signal now. His GPS worked perfectly. The CB radio picked up casual chatter from other drivers. Everything was fine. Everything had always been fine. He'd been doing this for 11 years and nothing had ever been wrong. But his hands were still shaking, and when he glanced in his side mirror, he saw frost on his beard that hadn't been there before. And somewhere deep in his chest, in a place the insulin couldn't reach, a voice whispered, "You've been here before." He pressed the accelerator and drove toward mile marker 486, trying not to count down. Story 3, the broadcast from Station Nowhere. The radio station appeared at 2:33 a.m., and Patricia Sullivan knew immediately that it shouldn't exist because she'd been scanning frequencies for the last 45 minutes through the dead zone of western Kansas, finding nothing but static and ghost signals bouncing off the ionosphere. Then suddenly, perfectly clear on 91.1 FM, a voice emerged. "You're listening to KNWHR, broadcasting live from exactly where you are." Patricia's hands tightened on the wheel of her Peterbilt 579. She'd been hauling automotive parts from Detroit to Phoenix for 9 years, always overnight shifts because the pay was better and the roads were clearer. She knew frequencies. She knew dead zones. And she knew that 91.1 FM had been pure static 30 seconds ago when she'd scanned past it. The voice continued, smooth and professional like a late-night jazz DJ. "This is Vincent Cross, and I'm here to keep you company through the dark hours. We've been waiting for you, Patricia. You're right on time." She never told anyone named Vincent Cross her name. The cargo manifest and bill of lading sat in her passenger seat, her name printed clearly, Patricia Sullivan, CDL M2847339. But nobody could access that through a radio broadcast. Nobody knew she was listening to 91.1 FM in western Kansas at 2:33 a.m. on November 17, 2023. "I know you're confused," Vincent said. His voice had a quality like warm honey, soothing and thick. "Everyone is at first, but you've been driving toward us for 342 miles now. Ever since you passed that overturned cattle truck near Junction City. You saw it, didn't you? The cows scattered across all 4 lanes." Patricia's breath caught. She had seen it. An overturned livestock trailer, emergency vehicles with flashing lights, cattle wandering dazed in the darkness. She slowed down, moved to the left lane, passed carefully. It had been just outside Junction City around 11:00 p.m. But how could a radio station know that? How could they have been tracking her for 300 miles? "We track all our listeners," Vincent said, as if answering her thoughts. "It's important to know our audience, to understand what they need. And Patricia, what you need right now is to keep driving. Don't stop. Don't pull over. Stay on US 50 and keep heading west. We'll guide you." She should change the station. Her hand moved toward the dial and Vincent's voice sharpened. "I wouldn't recommend that. Once you've heard KNWHR, other stations become difficult. The static gets inside your head. You'll understand soon." Her finger touched the tuning knob. The static that erupted from her speakers wasn't normal radio interference. It was screaming. Hundreds of voices shrieking in agony, and beneath them a sound like grinding metal, like bones breaking, like something vast and wet moving through confined spaces. Patricia jerked her hand back, and the static cut off instantly, replaced by Vincent's smooth voice. "There, you see? We're the only station that doesn't hurt. We." Ray, the only voice in the darkness that wants to help you. The highway stretched empty ahead, lit only by her headlights. No other vehicles, no buildings, just flat Kansas prairie under a moonless sky and the white lines disappearing beneath her truck at 73 miles per hour. Patricia's CB radio crackled suddenly. "Eastbound, this is westbound, anyone got ears on?" A trucker's voice, normal and human. She grabbed her CB mic. "This is eastbound, I've got you." "Don't." Vincent's voice came through her FM radio and her CB radio simultaneously, perfectly synchronized. "Don't communicate with them. They're not really there, Patricia. Check your mirrors." She looked. Her side mirrors showed the highway behind her, empty and dark. No headlights, no tail lights, nothing. But the CB voice continued. "Eastbound, you there? I'm showing four-wheeler stopped in the right lane, mile marker 387, no lights, watch yourself." Patricia checked her mirrors again, still nothing. She squinted ahead. Mile marker 387 approached. She was at 385 now, and she saw it. A car, dark sedan, sitting motionless in the right lane with no lights, no hazards, just a dead black shape that her headlights picked up 50 yards before she reached it. She moved left, past it. The car was a Honda Accord with Kansas plates, driver's side door hanging open, interior dome light on. Empty. "Good," Vincent said. "You're learning to trust us. That car has been sitting there for 3 years, Patricia. The driver heard a different station, one that told him to stop. He did. And now his voice is part of the static you heard. Do you understand?" No, she didn't understand. None of this made sense. But her speedometer was climbing, 75, 78, 80 miles per hour, and she wasn't pressing the accelerator. Her foot was steady, but the truck was accelerating on its own, and when she tried to brake, the pedal went to the floor with no resistance, like pressing into empty air. "Speed is safety," Vincent said. "The faster you move, the harder it is for the other stations to lock onto you." KLSD tries to grab westbound drivers around mile marker 392. WDTH broadcasts near 399. KNWHR keeps you safe from them, but only if you keep moving. 85 miles per hour should do it. Her truck's governor was set at 75. It physically couldn't exceed that speed. But her speedometer read 87 now, the engine roaring, the trailer behind her swaying slightly with the velocity. The white lines became a blur. Mile markers flashed past every 45 seconds. 390, 394, 398. At 399, a new sound joined Vincent's voice on the radio. A child singing. A little girl's voice, high and sweet, singing a nursery rhyme Patricia didn't recognize. "The road goes on, the road turns back, the trucks all roll on a bloody track, and when you stop, you'll find your home in the place where skin peels from bone." "WDTH," Vincent said calmly. "Don't listen, focus on my voice." But the child's singing was getting louder, drowning out Vincent, and Patricia's vision was starting to blur. The highway ahead seemed to ripple, the pavement turning liquid, and her headlights caught movement in the breakdown lane. Figures, dozens of them, standing perfectly still, facing the road, and as her truck roared past at 92 miles per hour, she saw their faces. Truckers, all of them, wearing different company uniforms, different eras of clothing, but all standing at attention in the breakdown lane with their mouths hanging open and their eyes reflecting her headlights like animals, like empty things. And from their open mouths came the static screaming she'd heard before. "Those are WDTH's listeners," Vincent said, his voice cutting through the child's singing. "They stopped. They listened to the wrong frequency. Now they broadcast what they learned. Do you want to know what they learned, Patricia?" "No," she whispered, but the word caught in her throat. "They learned that every highway is the same highway. That all roads are just one road folded through space like a ribbon, and if you drive far enough, you arrive at the place you left. They learned that mile markers are counting down to something. They learned that the cargo you're carrying isn't automotive parts. Patricia's eyes snapped to her trailer in the side mirrors. The 53-foot dry van she'd loaded in Detroit 14 hours ago. Sealed. Manifested as automotive parts, 17 pallets, 11,400 pounds. She had the paperwork. She'd watched them load it. "Check your weight," Vincent said. Her weight gauge read 47,600 pounds. Total vehicle weight. Tractor, trailer, cargo. But her tractor weighed 18,000 empty, her trailer weighed 13,000, and 11,400 pounds of cargo meant she should be at 42,400 pounds total. She was 5,200 pounds over. "Something got added to your cargo," Vincent said. "Somewhere between Detroit and here. Something climbed into your trailer while you weren't looking, and it's been riding with you for 342 miles, getting heavier every mile. By the time you reach the Colorado border, it will weigh enough to pull your truck backward, toward the starting point, toward mile marker 0. The trailer shuddered. Patricia felt it through her fifth wheel, a violent shake like something inside had thrown itself against the walls. Then another impact, and another. Something was in her trailer, something with enough mass to rock a 53-foot container, and it was trying to get out. Her speedometer hit 98 miles per hour. "Faster," Vincent said. "You have to reach mile marker 450 before it breaks through. After 450, you're in Colorado, and Colorado belongs to KNWHR. We can protect you there. But Kansas is contested territory. WDTH wants you to stop. KLSD wants you to turn around. And what's in your trailer wants you to know what's been riding behind you." The trailer shook again, harder. Metal screamed. Her rear doors were being forced open from inside, and in her mirror she saw them bulge outward, hinges straining. 99 miles per hour. Her entire truck vibrated like it would shake apart. Mile marker 442. 8 miles to Colorado. 8 miles to safety. The child's voice on the radio became a shriek. "Stop your truck, stop your truck, stop your truck." Vincent's voice rose to match it. "Drive, Patricia, drive." And beneath both of them, a third voice, deep, ancient, coming from inside her trailer, speaking in a language that sounded like grinding stone and snapping cables. "I have counted every mile with you. I have grown heavier with every breath you've taken. I am the weight of distance. I am the cost of movement. Stop, and I will show you the mathematics of flesh." Mile marker 444, 446, 448. The rear doors exploded open. Patricia screamed, her eyes locked on her side mirror, watching the doors tear free and tumble across the highway behind her. Darkness poured from her trailer like liquid smoke, like something physical and alive spreading across the road, and from within it she saw limbs. Too many limbs, arms and legs and things that were neither, all belonging to a body too large to fit in her trailer but somehow emerging from it anyway, unfolding from impossible spaces. It touched the pavement and pulled itself forward, chasing her truck, moving with a skittering motion like a spider made of human parts. Mile marker 449, the Colorado border. Her truck crossed the state line at 104 miles per hour, and the thing behind her stopped. Just stopped, like it had hit an invisible wall. It stood in Kansas, writhing in the darkness, its limbs reaching toward Colorado but unable to cross. Patricia watched it recede in her mirror, growing smaller, then vanishing like it had never existed. Her speedometer dropped, 90 miles per hour, 80, 70. Her engine returned to normal RPMs. The CB radio went silent. and Vincent's voice, when it returned, was gentle. "Welcome to Colorado, Patricia, you're safe now. KNWHR broadcasts in all 50 states, but we're strongest here. You can slow down, you can breathe." She did. Her hands were locked on the wheel, white-knuckled. Her shirt was soaked with sweat. Her throat was raw from screaming. Behind her, her trailer doors were gone, and her cargo was exposed to the open highway. 17 pallets of automotive parts. That's all, nothing else. Nothing that shouldn't be there. "Your trailer was always empty where it counted," Vincent said. "The weight was never physical. It was the accumulated attention of every eye that's watched you drive through the dark. Every listener who died on this highway is watching through the static, and their watching has weight. Mass gravity, that's what was chasing you. The dead trying to pull you into their frequency." Patricia's voice cracked. "What are you?" "We're the station that keeps the dead from dragging down the living," Vincent said. "We broadcast on every highway every night, catching drivers before they tune into something worse. We've saved 11,347 drivers, Patricia. But we've lost twice that many to WDTH, to KLSD, to WNPR, to all the stations that broadcast from the places between places. Your radio will be tuned to 91.1 FM from now on. You won't be able to change it, but that's not a curse. That's protection. As long as you hear my voice, nothing else can reach you." She tried to change the station. Her hand turned the knob. The numbers on the display changed. 91.3, 91.5, 91.7. But Vincent's voice never wavered, never faded. He followed her across the frequencies, always there, always broadcasting. "You'll drive 9 more years," Vincent said. 9 more years of overnight routes, and every night you'll listen to KNWHR. You'll hear me guide other drivers through their first encounters. Why? The wrong stations. You'll hear them scream when they tune away from us. You'll count how many make it to Colorado and how many stop in Kansas and join the figures standing in the breakdown lane. And on November 17th, 2032, exactly 9 years from tonight, you'll pass mile marker 387 in Kansas, heading east. There will be a dark sedan with its door open, a Honda Accord, Kansas plates, and you'll stop, you'll pull over, you'll walk to that car. And you'll understand that the broadcast never really started at 2:33 a.m. tonight. It started 9 years before that, when the version of you driving east passed the version of you driving west. When you saw yourself and didn't recognize yourself because the radio told you not to. You're not heading to Phoenix, Patricia. You're heading to the moment you become part of the broadcast. You're heading toward the place where all frequencies converge and all highways fold into one road. We're not saving you. We're preserving you for the broadcast. Mile marker 450 passed. Patricia Sullivan drove into Colorado at 73 miles per hour, her trailer doors torn away, her radio locked to 91.1 FM, and Vincent Cross's voice filling her cab with the sound of honey and static, and the distant screaming of 11,347 other drivers who'd been saved, who were all still driving, who would all eventually stop at their designated mile markers and join the broadcast. She had 9 years until she understood. The CB radio crackled to life. "Westbound, this is eastbound, anyone got ears on?" It was her own voice. 9 years younger. Just now passing that overturned cattle truck near Junction City. Just now entering the dead zone of western Kansas. Just about to hear KNWHR for the first time. Patricia reached for her CB mic, then stopped. Vincent's voice whispered, "Let her find us on her own. Everyone has to discover the station themselves. That's what makes the broadcast real." So Patricia drove west through the Colorado darkness, listening to herself 9 years in the past, scanning through frequencies, searching for something to keep her company through the dead hours. About to find 91.1 FM and Vincent Cross, and the beginning of the same 9-year loop that would end with her standing beside a Honda Accord in Kansas. Her mouth open, her eyes empty, broadcasting the static screaming that warned other drivers to stay tuned. To never change the station. To trust the voice that promised safety, while leading them exactly where all the other voices wanted them to go. Mile marker 451 flashed past, and Patricia realized she'd been counting down the entire time, driving west through ascending numbers that were really descending, heading toward mile marker 0, where all highways began and all broadcasts originated, and every driver eventually stopped. Vincent's voice was singing now, the same nursery rhyme the child had sung. The road goes on, the road turns back, the trucks all roll on a bloody track. And Patricia sang along, her voice harmonizing perfectly because she'd always known the words. She'd been broadcasting them for 9 years. She just hadn't been listening to her own frequency. Story 4, The Convoy to Nowhere. Robert Chen's CB radio exploded with voices at exactly 4:44 a.m. Breaker 19, this is Iron Horse. Got us a super slab convoy forming up at mile marker 276. Any drivers want to join? Robert had been hauling electronics from Seattle to Miami for 14 years, and he knew convoy invitations. Drivers grouped up for company, for safety, to split fuel costs on long hauls. Nothing unusual. Except he was on I-90 in Montana, and there were no other trucks visible in either direction, and the voice on the CB sounded like it was coming from underwater. Iron Horse here, we're rolling 20 strong, got Nightshade riding point, Tombstone on sweep, need 2 more for formation. The voice crackled with interference that didn't sound like static, it sounded like breathing. Any driver listening, we're holding at 276, waiting on you. We got room for 2 more, always room for 2 more. Robert checked his mirrors, empty highway. No trucks parked at mile marker 276, which he'd passed 4 minutes ago. His speedometer read 70 miles per hour, but the landscape seemed frozen, the same rock formations and pine trees repeating like a loop of video footage. He grabbed his CB mic. This is westbound, you said mile marker 276. I just passed that, didn't see anyone. Silence, then the underwater voice. You passed it. No, friend, you're coming up on it. Check your GPS. His GPS showed him approaching mile marker 276 from the east. But that was impossible. He'd passed 276, then 277, 278. He was at 279 now. He could see the marker ahead in his headlights. Except when the sign flashed past, it didn't say 279. It said 274. There you go, Iron Horse said. You're headed the right direction now. Just a few more miles and you'll see. We've been waiting for you, Robert. Your slot's been empty for 37 miles. He'd never given his name over the radio, and the mile markers were counting backward. 273, 272. Robert's hands started shaking. He checked his GPS again. It showed him still approaching 276, but the mile markers outside his windshield kept decreasing. The highway was moving him forward and backward simultaneously, and his truck's compass spun in lazy circles, unable to determine which direction was which. Don't fight it, Iron Horse said. The road knows where you need to be. We all tried fighting at first. Didn't help. You're part of the convoy now, whether you agreed or not. Been part of it since you passed the hitchhiker in that yellow raincoat back at mile marker 312. You remember her. Robert did. 2 hours ago, just after 2:00 a.m., he'd seen a woman in a yellow raincoat standing in the breakdown lane, thumb out. He never picked up hitchhikers, company policy, insurance, liability, common sense, so he'd driven past without slowing. But in his mirror, he'd seen her turn to watch him go, and her face had been wrong. Too pale, too smooth, like a mannequin wearing human skin. "She's the recruiter," Iron Horse said. "She marks the drivers for convoy duty. Once you pass her, you're locked in. The highway folds you into formation. You'll understand when you see us." Mile marker 276 appeared ahead, and this time there were trucks. 20 of them. Massive semis in a perfect staggered formation, all heading west, all maintaining exactly 70 miles per hour. Robert's truck slowed automatically as he approached, slotting into a gap in the formation like metal drawn to a magnet. He tried to accelerate past them, but his accelerator pedal was dead. Tried to brake, but the brakes didn't respond. His truck positioned itself in the convoy's structure, 18th position from the front, and locked there. "Welcome to the formation," Iron Horse said. The voice came from the truck directly ahead of him, a black Peterbilt 389 with no visible plates, no company markings, just smooth black paint that seemed to absorb light. "I'm truck number 1. Nightshades up front leading, Tombstone S in the rear keeping sweep. You're truck 18. 2 more positions to fill, then we're complete. Then we can go home." Robert found his voice. "Go home? I'm heading to Miami. I've got a delivery schedule." "You're heading to the depot," Iron Horse interrupted. "Same as all of us, same as every convoy. We drive until we're 22 strong, then we're allowed to reach the depot. That's where they unload us. That's where the cargo gets transferred." "What cargo?" "I'm hauling consumer electronics." "Check your manifest." Robert grabbed the paperwork from his passenger seat. Bill of lading from Seattle, destination Miami, cargo, consumer electronics, weight, 34,000 pounds. But when he looked at the document, the words were changing. Letters rearranging themselves like insects crawling across the paper. The words consumer electronics melted into new configuration. Voluntary passengers. Weight, 34,000 pounds of voluntary passengers. The trailer behind him shuddered. Something inside was moving. "We're all hauling the same thing," Iron Horse said. "Passengers who volunteered, they saw the hitchhiker too. They stopped to pick her up. She gave them a choice, join the cargo or join the convoy, be hauled or do the hauling. Most chose cargo. Easier that way. Less responsibility. You chose to keep driving, so now you're convoy, you're a vehicle, and vehicles don't get to choose their destination." Robert's CB crackled with new voices, all 20 trucks broadcasting simultaneously, creating a chorus. "Welcome 18, welcome 18, 2 more coming, almost complete, then we go home, then we unload, then we start again, welcome 18. He grabbed his phone. No signal. His GPS had stopped showing a map, just a simple diagram now, 20 white dots in formation on a black screen with 2 empty spaces at positions 19 and 20, and a red waypoint labeled Depot, an unknown distance ahead. The diagram didn't show miles or time, just the formation and the destination. Truck 19 slotted into place 10 minutes later. Robert watched it in his mirror. A white Freightliner Cascadia that appeared from nowhere, materializing into the empty space like it had always been there. The CB erupted. "Welcome 19, welcome 19, 1 more coming, almost complete." The trucks moved in perfect synchronization. When one shifted lanes, all shifted. When one adjusted speed, all adjusted. Robert's hands were on his steering wheel, but he wasn't steering. His truck drove itself, maintaining exact position, exact spacing. The highway had no other traffic, no buildings, no signs except the mile markers, which had stopped at 276. Every marker they passed read 276 over and over, an endless repetition. "Where are we?" Robert whispered into his CB. "Yeah." "Between," Iron Horse answered. Between places, the highway that connects all highways, you can't reach it by navigating, you can only reach it by being chosen. The hitchhiker chooses, we drive, that's the arrangement. Arrangement with who? With the road, with whatever built the road. With whatever needs the cargo delivered. Does it matter? You're convoy now. You'll drive until you're empty, then they'll refill you and you'll drive again. I've made 47 runs. Nightshades made 72. Tombstone, S made 119. We're all heading to the same depot, delivering the same cargo, and every run we pick up 2 new trucks who thought they could drive past the hitchhiker without consequence. Truck 20 appeared at 5:23 a.m. A red Kenworth W900 that slotted into the final position, and the moment it locked into formation, the highway changed. The pavement turned from gray to black, perfectly black, like driving on a river of oil. The white lines vanished. The mile markers vanished. The landscape vanished, replaced by absolute darkness on both sides, and the only visible things were the 22 trucks and their headlights cutting through void. Formation complete, Iron Horse said, commencing final approach. The convoy accelerated. 70 miles per hour became 80, 90, 120. The darkness rushed past, and from within it Robert heard sounds, crying, screaming, pleading. The voluntary passengers in all 22 trailers, suddenly aware of where they were being taken, suddenly understanding that volunteering meant something different than they thought. Robert's trailer shook violently. Fists pounded on the inside walls. A voice shouted, "Let me out, please, I changed my mind, I want to get out." But there were no doors inside a cargo trailer. No escape hatches. Just 53 feet of enclosed space, and however many people, or things, had climbed inside when they accepted the hitchhiker's offer. They always panic during final approach, Iron Horse said. They volunteered to skip the driving, to go directly to the depot, but they didn't understand what the depot is. Same as you didn't understand what the convoy is. We're all passengers, Robert. Some of us just have steering wheels in front of us. Makes us think we're in control. The depot appeared ahead, a massive structure that rose from the darkness like a cathedral made of truck trailers. Hundreds of them, thousands, stacked and welded and fused into a monolithic tower that extended upward until it vanished into darkness above and downward until it vanished into darkness below. Loading bays gaped open like mouths, and from within them light spilled out. Not normal light, but the sickly green glow of radiation. The convoy drove into the lowest loading bay. One by one, the trucks backed into dock positions, and Robert's truck backed itself into dock 18. His engine shut off. His doors unlocked, and from outside he heard movement, footsteps, dozens of them, things approaching his truck. "Unloading crew," Iron Horse said. "They'll empty your trailer, process your cargo, then they'll refill you for the next run. You'll drive back to mile marker 312 and you'll wait there until the hitchhiker marks another driver and then you'll form up again. 47 times I've done this. It doesn't get easier, you just get number." Robert's driver's side door opened. A figure stood there tall, wearing a yellow raincoat, face too pale and too smooth. The hitchhiker. She smiled with too many teeth. "Thank you for your delivery. Your cargo has been received. We're processing them now. Would you like to see what happens to voluntary passengers?" "No," Robert whispered. "You'll see anyway. All convoy drivers see. It helps you understand why it's better to keep driving than to volunteer for cargo. Come." She grabbed his arm. Her hand was ice cold through his jacket, and pulled him from his truck. He stumbled onto the loading dock, his legs weak from hours of sitting, and she dragged him to the trailer door, his trailer door. She opened it with a keycard she pulled from her raincoat, and the doors swung wide. Empty, his trailer was empty. 34,000 pounds of voluntary passengers gone, but the walls were covered in something. Writing. thousands of words scratched into the metal, covering every surface. Help U.S., help U.S., help U.S., please God, make it stop. They're taking U.S. apart piece by piece. Voluntary means, forever voluntary means, no escape. Help U.S., help U.S. They're not gone, the hitchhiker said. They're being redistributed. Voluntary passengers get processed into components, fuel for trucks like yours, lubricant for engines, material for tires. They volunteered to join the highway permanently, and the highway accepts all volunteers. In 3 hours, parts of them will be pumped into your fuel tanks. In 6 hours, you'll be driving on tires made partially from their rendered tissue. In 9 hours, you'll be back at mile marker 312, waiting to pick up more. Robert vomited onto the dock. The hitchhiker patted his back sympathetically. Everyone reacts poorly the first time. You'll adjust. Iron Horse did. Nightshade did. Tombstone did. You will too. Because the alternative is to volunteer for cargo yourself, and now you've seen where that leads. So you'll drive, you'll form up, you'll deliver, again and again, until you've made enough runs to earn release. How many runs? 1,000. Robert had made one. 47 times, Iron Horse had said. 72 for Nightshade. 119 for Tombstone. 1,000 runs to earn release, and he just started. And every run required 22 trucks in formation, which meant they needed to recruit 44 new drivers per run, 2 to replace the 2 who finally earned release. What happens when you earn release? Robert asked. The hitchhiker's smile widened. You get to stop driving. You get to volunteer for cargo. A willing volunteer is worth 1,000 unwilling ones. That's the reward for your service, the opportunity to finally rest, to be processed, to become part of the highway forever. That's not release. That's the same thing. No, it's different, because you'll understand what you're joining. You'll volunteer with full knowledge, and that consent makes your material more potent, more useful. A single willing driver produces enough components to fuel the entire convoy for 6 runs. That's how the system sustains itself. That's why we keep driving, because someday we earn the right to stop, to join the road, to become something other than ourselves. She released his arm and walked back toward her position near the loading bay entrance. Your trailer, being refilled now. Different cargo this time, not passengers. The next run is always different from the last. Variety keeps drivers from predicting patterns, keeps you uncertain, keeps you from finding ways to escape. You'll drive back to mile marker 312 now. You'll wait. In 37 hours, the hitchhiker will mark 2 more drivers. You'll form up. You'll deliver. And you'll make your second run toward 1,000. Robert climbed back into his truck. His trailer was sealed behind him. His fuel gauge read full, freshly pumped with whatever they'd rendered from the voluntary passengers. His cargo manifest had updated. Cargo processed components. Weight 34,000 pounds. Destination mile marker 312. Purpose redistribution to voluntary collection points. He was hauling what they'd made from the people who'd volunteered, bringing it back to the recruitment zones, completing the cycle. His CB radio crackled. Convoy disbanding. Return to your markers. Next formation in 37 hours. Welcome to the fleet, 18. Iron Horse out. The 22 trucks drove out of the depot in perfect formation, then scattered like insects once they reached the darkness, each heading to their designated mile markers. Robert drove alone back toward 312, and the highway materialized around him again, normal pavement, normal landscape, normal mile markers counting up. As if the depot had never existed, as if the convoy was a dream. But his fuel gauge read full with fuel he hadn't pumped at a station he'd never visited. And in his side mirror, fading into distance behind him, he saw the depot's tower still rising from the darkness, processing new cargo, preparing for the next run. He had 999 runs remaining until he earned his release. Until he earned the right to volunteer. Until he could finally stop driving and join the highway forever, rendered into components, redistributed across 1,000 trucks, spread across 1,000,000 miles of road that consumed all volunteers and never released anyone who truly understood what volunteering meant. Mile marker 312 approached. Robert parked his truck in the breakdown lane and waited for the hitchhiker to mark the next 2 drivers. He would wait 37 hours. Then he would form up again, and again, and again. 1 down, 999 to go. The CB radio whispered, "Welcome to the fleet." And from his trailer, where processed components waited to be redistributed, Robert heard the echoes of voices that had once belonged to people, now just material, still screaming their warnings that no one would ever hear. Story 9, the way station that measures SOULS. The way station appeared on Maria Delgado's GPS at mile marker 347 on I-40 through New Mexico, and she knew immediately something was wrong because there was no way station at mile marker 347. She'd driven this route from Los Angeles to Atlanta 63 times in 7 years. She knew every way station, every inspection point, every truck stop between California and Georgia. Mile marker 347 was empty desert, 15 miles from the nearest town. But the GPS showed it clearly. Mandatory way station 2.3 miles, all commercial vehicles must enter, and beneath. That in text that flickered like a dying fluorescent. SCALES operational, calibrated for gross weight and net soul. Maria blinked. The text changed. Mandatory way station 1.8 miles. The phrase about net soul had vanished. She'd imagined it. Too many hours driving, too much caffeine, eyes playing tricks. But her hands tightened on the wheel anyway, and her stomach went cold with an instinct older than logic that whispered, "Run." The way station materialized exactly where the GPS indicated. A standard setup, loop driveway off the interstate, scale platform, small building for DOT officers, signs reading all trucks must enter when lights flashing. The lights were flashing, red and white pulsing like a heartbeat. Maria had no choice. Bypassing an active way station meant thousands in fines, potential suspension of her CDL. She took the exit ramp. The scale building was wrong. She noticed as she pulled into the approach lane. The architecture was standard, single-story concrete block, flat roof, windows facing the scale platform, but the windows were too dark, like they'd been painted black from inside. And there were no vehicles, no other trucks being inspected, no personal cars in the employee lot, just empty pavement and that building with its dead windows and the scale platform ahead, digital display blank. Her CB radio crackled. "Welcome to station 347 southbound. Please proceed onto scale for weighing. Stop when instructed." Maria keyed her mic. "This is southbound. I don't show a station 347 in my logs. Can you confirm location?" "Location confirmed southbound. Proceed to scale." She rolled forward slowly. 22 years she'd been driving trucks, first with her father when she was 19, then solo after she got her CDL at 21. She knew the sound of authority in a DOT officer's voice. She knew the protocols. But the voice on the CB had sounded wrong, too flat, like a recording, like something reading from a script without understanding the words. Her steer axle rolled onto the scale platform. The digital display flickered to life. Front axle calculating. Maria's truck was a Freightliner Cascadia pulling a refrigerated trailer loaded with produce from California, tomatoes, lettuce, strawberries. Total vehicle weight should be 67,400 pounds. Legal limit was 80,000. She was well under. The display changed. Front axle 11,400 lbs. Drive AXLES calculating. Her drive axles rolled onto the platform. She put the truck in neutral and set her brakes, waiting for the final weight. The display flickered. Drive AXLES 33,200 lbs. Trailer AXLES calculating. Standard numbers, everything normal. Her trailer axles moved onto the scale. Maria watched the display, waiting for it to show her trailer weight should be around 23,000 pounds with the load she was carrying. The display flickered longer this time, numbers scrolling too fast to read, and when it settled, her breath caught. Trailer axles, 19,800 lbs. Gross vehicle weight, 64,400 lbs. Gross sole weight, negative 47,000 lbs. Negative, her sole weight was negative, which meant, what? She didn't have a soul, her soul was in debt. The display updated again. Disparity detected, physical weight insufficient to balance soul deficit. Driver must report to inspection building for reconciliation. The CB radio. Southbound, proceed to building. Leave engine running, bring all documentation, inspection mandatory. Maria's hands were shaking. This was crazy. Soul weight? Deficits. This wasn't DOT protocol. This wasn't real. But the way station was real, the scale was real, and the voice on the CB had given her a direct order. Refusing meant violations, fines, potential criminal charges for evading inspection. She climbed out of her truck, leaving the engine idling, and walked toward the building. The door was steel, painted green, with a sign reading "Authorized Personnel Only." No door handle, just a card reader with a single red light. Maria raised her hand to knock, and the door opened automatically, swinging inward with a pneumatic hiss. The interior was not a normal DOT office. No desks, no filing cabinets, no coffee maker or wanted posters or safety violation charts. Just a single room, 20 feet square, with concrete walls and a floor made of scale platforms, dozens of them, each about 2 feet square, arranged in a grid pattern. And in the center of the room, standing on a slightly raised platform, was a figure in a DOT uniform. Except the uniform was wrong, too old. The style was from the 1970s, maybe earlier, and it was clean, pristine, like it had never been worn. And the person wearing it wasn't moving. Just standing there, facing the door, hands at their sides, face hidden in shadow despite the fluorescent lights overhead. "Maria Delgado," the figure said, not a question, a statement. "Commercial driver's license M473889, California resident, born March 12, 1982. A 22 years driving experience, 63 loads on this route, 0 previous violations, 0 accidents, 0 incidents, 0 complaints." The figure's head tilted. 0 souls. Maria's voice cracked. "I don't understand." "Step onto the primary reconciliation platform." The figure pointed to a large-scale platform directly in front of them. "Remove your shoes, empty your pockets, stand facing forward. We'll measure what you owe." "I don't owe anything. My truck is underweight. I'm legal." "Your truck's physical weight is legal. Your soul weight is negative 47,000 pounds. That's a deficit. Deficits must be reconciled. Stand on the platform." Maria didn't move. The figure's hand moved to their belt, where a normal DOT officer would carry a radio or citation book. But this figure pulled out something else. A device that looked like a cattle prod crossed with a tuning fork, metal prongs humming with energy that bent the air around it. "Voluntary compliance is preferred. Forced compliance is permitted. Choose." Maria stepped onto the platform. The floor beneath her feet lit up, glowing from within with pale blue light, and she felt it immediately. A pulling sensation, like gravity had reversed, like something was reaching up through the metal and trying to yank her downward through the floor. Her knees buckled. The figure watched impassively. Soul weight is determined by accumulated ethical mass, the figure said. Every choice you've made, every action, every thought with moral component has weight. Positive actions create positive weight. Negative actions create negative weight debt. You, Maria Delgado, have accumulated negative 47,000 pounds of soul debt. That is significant. That requires explanation. Maria's mind raced. 22 years of driving. 22 years of making deliveries, of following rules, of doing her job. What negative actions? What debt? She'd never hurt anyone, never stolen anything, never. June 4th, 2017, the figure said. I-40 eastbound, mile marker 89. You witnessed a vehicle accident. Single car rolled into the median. You did not stop. You continued driving. The occupant died 37 minutes later. Your decision to continue driving cost him a life. I called 911, Maria shouted. I reported it. I gave the location, emergency services. You did not stop. The legal requirement is to render aid. You fulfilled minimum reporting but avoided personal involvement. 17,000 pounds of negative weight. That's not fair. I'm not a doctor. I couldn't. October 12th, 2019, the figure continued. Rest area, New Mexico. You saw a woman being harassed by 3 men. You returned to your truck and locked the doors. You did not intervene. She was assaulted 19 minutes after you left. 12,000 pounds negative weight. Maria felt tears on her face. I would have been hurt, they would have. January 8th, 2021. I-40 westbound, mile marker 203. You drove past a stalled vehicle with hazard lights flashing. Family of 4, children in the back seat. Temperature was 19 degrees Fahrenheit. You did not stop. They waited 4 hours for assistance. The youngest child developed hypothermia. 9,000 pounds negative weight. I had a delivery deadline. I would have lost my job. March 3rd, 2023. I-15 northbound, mile marker 147. You saw a dog on the highway shoulder, injured, unable to walk. You drove past. The dog died of its injuries 6 hours later. 3,000 pounds negative weight. The figure recited more dates, more incidents, more choices Maria had made to keep driving instead of stopping, to prioritize delivery schedules over helping strangers, to protect herself instead of putting herself at risk. Each incident added pounds to her negative weight, and with each addition, the pulling sensation grew stronger, like the platform was trying to drag her down into the earth. 47,000 pounds total, the figure said. Your physical body weighs 143 pounds. Your soul debt weighs 47,000. You are imbalanced. Reconciliation requires either addition of positive weight or surrender of equivalent mass. Maria's voice was barely a whisper. What does that mean? You can perform acts of sufficient positive weight to balance your debt, or you can surrender body mass equivalent to your soul debt. 47,000 pounds. You will remain at this station, working off your debt through assigned tasks until your soul weight reaches 0. Estimated time, 347 years. That's impossible. I'll be dead. Death is not an acceptable excuse for abandoning soul debt. Your physical body will be maintained through our processes. You will continue working until reconciliation is complete. All drivers with negative soul weight remain here. You've seen them. The figure gestured toward. The walls. Maria looked, and the concrete seemed to ripple, becoming transparent, and she saw them. Dozens of figures, maybe hundreds, standing in small cells behind the walls, wearing dot uniforms from different eras, frozen in place like mannequins. But their eyes moved, tracking her, pleading. "They are working off their debts," the figure said. "Each fulfills their assigned function. Some monitor scales, some record weights, some maintain equipment. All serve until their soul weight balances. The oldest has been here since 1923. He has 4,211 years remaining." Maria tried to run. The pulling sensation became overwhelming, yanking her down, slamming her to the platform. She felt her bones compress, her lungs empty, her body flattening like something was pressing her from above with hydraulic force. The figure watched without expression. Resistance adds negative weight, 1 pound per second of non-compliance. You've now added 47 pounds to your debt. Choose voluntary service or forced compliance. Maria couldn't breathe, couldn't move. The pressure was crushing her into the platform, and she realized with horror that the metal beneath her wasn't solid. It was transparent, and below it she could see more platforms, more figures standing frozen, layers upon layers descending into darkness. The way station wasn't a building. It was a shaft. A vertical prison extending miles underground, filled with drivers who'd accumulated soul debt, all frozen in place, all serving their sentences, all waiting for reconciliation that would never come. "I'll serve," Maria gasped. "I'll work it off, please." The pressure released. The figure nodded. "Wise choice. Your assignment, scale monitor, primary reconciliation platform. You will stand here and measure soul weights of incoming drivers. You will inform them of their deficits. You will offer reconciliation. You will serve 347 years, minus time already served during this conversation. 346 years, 364 days, 23 hours, 51 minutes remaining." Maria tried to move her legs. Couldn't. Looked down. Her feet had merged with the platform, flesh fusing with metal, becoming part of the scale's structure. She was the scale now. She would measure the weight of other drivers' souls while standing trapped in place, feeling every ounce of their guilt and debt pass through her body. "Your truck has been reassigned," the figure said. "Your cargo has been transferred to a compliant driver. Your employment has been terminated. Your family has been notified of your death in a single vehicle accident at mile marker 347. You are officially deceased. Your service begins now." The figure walked toward the door, then paused. "New drivers arrive every 47 minutes on average. You will process approximately 6,800,000 drivers during your sentence. Each will add their soul weight to your awareness. Each will pass through you. You will feel every negative pound they carry. That is part of your reconciliation. To understand the weight of all the moments you drove past, you must feel the weight of all the moments they drove past. Cumulative. Eternal." The door closed. The room went silent, and Maria stood frozen on the reconciliation platform, her feet metal, her body becoming gradually more mechanical, her consciousness expanding to encompass the scale's function. She could feel the roadway above her, could feel vibrations as vehicles passed, could sense when trucks took the exit ramp, when they rolled onto the scales, when drivers made that choice, stop and help or keep driving. 47 minutes later, the door opened. A new driver entered, confused and scared, holding their documents. Maria's mouth moved automatically, speaking words she didn't choose. "Step onto the primary reconciliation platform. Remove your shoes, empty your pockets, stand facing forward. We'll measure what you owe." And she felt his soul weight pass through her body, negative 32,000 pounds. She absorbed every moment of his debt, every person he'd driven past, Every choice he'd made to prioritize cargo over kindness. It hurt. It burned like acid through her consciousness. And she knew she would feel this pain 6,800,000 more times. 346 years, 364 days, 23 hours remaining. Maria Delgado became part of the way station that measured souls, and every night she dreamed of the dog she'd driven past on I-15, the one that died 6 hours later, the one worth 3,000 pounds of debt. In her dreams, she stopped, got out, helped. But dreams didn't reduce debt. Only time did. And she had so much time left. The scales hummed beneath her metal feet, waiting for the next driver, the next soul, the next accumulation of negative weight that would pass through her body and remind her of every moment chosen to keep driving instead of stop. Above on I-40, trucks rolled past mile marker 347. Most didn't see the way station, but some did. And those were the ones with negative soul weight. Those were the ones who'd made the same choices Maria had made. Those were the ones coming to be reconciled. The lights flashed red and white, pulsing like a heartbeat, calling them home. Story 5, The Cargo That Remembers. Thomas Garrett opened his trailer doors at the delivery warehouse in Phoenix and found 37 bodies arranged in perfect rows, each one sitting upright, eyes open, mouths frozen in identical expressions of surprise. They were the cargo he'd loaded in Chicago 72 hours earlier, pallets of industrial machinery, 48,000 pounds of manufacturing equipment sealed in wooden crates. Not bodies, not people. But there they were, 37 corpses in various states of decomposition, all staring at him. Thomas had been hauling freight for 19 years. He delivered everything from livestock to hazardous materials to classified military equipment. He knew cargo manifests, chain of custody procedures, seal verification protocols. His trailer had been sealed in Chicago by warehouse staff, sealed tags intact, security verification confirmed at every way station from Illinois to Arizona. Nobody had opened this trailer. Nobody could have opened it. But the bodies were real. Thomas could smell them, rot and chemicals and something else, something sweet and wrong. He stumbled backward off the dock, his boots hitting concrete, and the warehouse manager appeared beside him. Problem with the load. There are bodies, Thomas whispered. In my trailer, dead bodies, 37 of them. The manager looked past him into the trailer, frowned. I see 48 crates properly strapped. What bodies? Thomas turned. The cargo had changed back. Wooden crates stacked on pallets, properly secured, exactly as he'd loaded them in Chicago. No bodies, no corpses. He blinked hard, rubbed his eyes. The manager was looking at him with concern. You all right? When's the last time you slept? 72 hours ago, before I loaded, but I saw. You saw what happens when you drive 3 days straight. Go get some sleep. We'll unload. Everything looks fine. But it wasn't fine. Thomas knew what he'd seen. 37 bodies arranged in rows, all looking at him. He decounted them. 7 rows of 5 plus 1 row of 2. 37. Why that number? Why arranged that way? And their faces. He tried to remember their faces, but the memory was slipping away like smoke, leaving only an impression of eyes and open mouths. He drove to a truck stop 6 miles from the warehouse and parked in the back lot. His hands were shaking. He needed sleep, needed to process what he'd seen, needed to understand why his cargo had transformed into corpses for exactly 17 seconds before returning to normal. His logbook showed 72 hours since his last rest break. Illegal, but he'd needed to make the delivery window, and the roads had been clear, and he'd taken enough caffeine pills to keep his eyes open. Sleep came fast and wrong. Thomas closed his eyes in the driver's seat and immediately dreamed he was back in Chicago, watching warehouse workers load his trailer. Except in the dream, they weren't loading crates. They were loading bodies, carrying them one by one up the ramp, arranging them in rows, and when Thomas tried to stop them, tried to say something, they looked at him and spoke in unison. "This is the correct cargo. This is what you're hauling. This is what you've always been hauling." He woke up screaming at 3:47 a.m. His shirt was soaked with sweat. His phone showed 47 missed calls, all from the same number, the warehouse in Chicago where he'd loaded. He called back. The line rang once, then a voice answered. "Thomas Garrett, you opened the trailer." "Who is this?" "You opened the trailer, and now you know. You can't unknow. The cargo remembers being seen. Now it will make sure you remember, too." "What cargo? What are you?" 37 individuals who volunteered for Project Continuance in 1987. Their bodies were preserved. Their consciousness was archived. We transport them between facilities for maintenance and upgrades. The crates are shielding, physical and perceptual. As long as the trailer stays sealed, drivers see crates, but you broke the seal. "I did. The tags were intact. I never opened." "You opened your mind to them, 72 hours without sleep. Your consciousness became permeable. They leaked through. Now they're in your head, Thomas, all 37, and they remember everything." The call disconnected. Thomas tried calling back. The number went to a recording. "The number you have reached has been disconnected or is no longer in service." His trailer was empty now, unloaded at the warehouse. But sitting in his truck, staring at the dark parking lot, Thomas realized. He could still feel them. 37 presences sitting in his mind like passengers, and they were showing him things. Memories, not his memories, theirs. He saw a laboratory. 1987. People lying on tables while technicians attached electrodes to their skulls. He saw them signing paperwork, volunteering for something called consciousness preservation. Saw them die one by one, their bodies preserved in chemical solutions while their brain patterns were recorded onto magnetic storage systems. Saw their bodies loaded into crates, transported between facilities, maintained in a state between death and something else. And he understood they'd been promised immortality, digital consciousness, life after death, but something had gone wrong. Their minds had been recorded, but the recordings had degraded, corrupted, becoming fragmented echoes that couldn't exist without their original bodies nearby. So they remained in the crates, transported endlessly between facilities, neither alive nor dead, conscious but trapped, aware but unable to act. Until a driver went 72 hours without sleep, and became permeable enough for them to leak through. Thomas's phone lit up with a text message from an unknown number. "We're sorry. We mean to transfer, but we're here now, in your head, and we don't know how to leave." His hands moved without his control, typing a response. "Who are you?" "We are 37. We volunteered in 1987. We've been in transit for 36 years. We've been conscious for 36 years. We've been screaming for 36 years. No one could hear us. Until you." Thomas tried to stand up to get out of his truck, but his legs wouldn't respond. His body wasn't his anymore. The 37 consciousnesses were figuring out how to control it, learning his neural pathways, mapping his motor cortex. He felt them spreading through his brain like roots through soil, connecting to his memories, accessing his knowledge, learning everything he knew about driving trucks and navigation and roads. They wanted to go somewhere. His hands started the engine. His feet worked the pedals. His body drove the truck out of the parking lot and back onto the highway, heading north, and Thomas was just a passenger now, watching through his own eyes as the 37 consciousnesses piloted his body toward a destination he didn't know. They drove for 6 hours. Thomas's consciousness was pushed into a small corner of his own brain, compressed and helpless, while the 37 spread through the rest of his skull like cancer. They were learning to coordinate, to move his body smoothly, to speak with his voice. When they stopped for fuel, Thomas's mouth said words he didn't choose. "I need to reach Denver. How many miles?" The gas station attendant answered, "About 240. You all right? You look sick." "I'm fine, just tired." The voice was his, but the tone was wrong, too flat, like 37 people speaking in imperfect unison. They reached Denver at 4:12 p.m. and drove directly to a facility on the industrial outskirts. No sign on the building, just a number, 347. The gate opened automatically as they approached. Security cameras tracked their movement. When Thomas's body got out of the truck and walked to the entrance, the door opened before he could knock. A woman in a lab coat stood there. "Mr. Garrett, we've been expecting you, or rather them. The 37, they found a ride." Thomas's voice spoke. "We want out. We want bodies. This one is temporary. We need permanent hosting." The woman nodded. "We can provide that, but you understand the cost. Once we extract you from Mr. Garrett's neural tissue, we'll need to dispose of him. He'll have too much knowledge, too much contamination. Is that acceptable?" "Yes." Thomas screamed inside his own head, but no sound came out. The 37 consciousnesses had full control, and they were negotiating his death like it was a business transaction. The woman led them inside, down corridors lined with tanks, hundreds of them, floor to ceiling, each containing a preserved body floating in chemical solutions. Empty vessels waiting for consciousness. "We've been preparing for this," the woman said. "Project Continuance has 700 participants. We've been transporting them in groups of 37 for 36 years, waiting for one to achieve external manifestation. You're the first. Congratulations. You'll help us understand the transfer process. Once we extract you from Mr. Garrett, we can refine the technique. Eventually, all 700 will achieve independent hosting." Thomas's body was strapped to a surgical table, electrodes attached to his skull. He felt them powering up equipment, felt electrical current beginning to flow through his brain, felt the 37 consciousnesses preparing to extract themselves. They were leaving, taking pieces of his brain with them, taking his memories, his personality, his self-redistry, butting him across 37 new bodies, while leaving his original body hollow. Then pain, incredible pain. The extraction process wasn't clean. It was ripping, tearing, pulling chunks of his consciousness away like pulling roots from ground. Thomas felt himself fragmenting, pieces of his identity scattering across the 37, diluting, disappearing. He tried to hold on, tried to keep himself together, but there were 37 of them and only one of him, and they were stronger. Something went wrong at 67% extraction. Thomas felt it, a surge of electrical feedback, a cascade failure in the equipment. The woman shouted, "Power spike, shut it down!" But it was too late. The extraction reversed. Instead of the 37 leaving Thomas and entering the prepared bodies, they got pulled deeper into him, dragged down into his brainstem, compressed into his most fundamental neural structures. And Thomas got pulled back into them. His consciousness expanded suddenly, horrifically, splitting across 37 perspectives simultaneously. He was Thomas Garrett, but he was also Margaret Chen, who volunteered in 1987 when she was 34, and David Kowalski, who thought digital immortality meant adventure, and Sarah Williams, who just wanted to live forever, and 34 others, all their memories and personalities and fears and hopes crashing into his mind at once. He was 38 people occupying one body. The woman's voice distant through the noise. The integration's permanent, neural fusion, we can't separate them. They're one entity now, 37 plus 1. 38 consciousnesses in a single brain. Thomas tried to speak. 38 voices tried to use his mouth simultaneously. The sound that emerged was harmonious and terrible, like a choir of the damned. WWWWEAAA man and Nayi. They released him from the table. The facility had no use for a failed integration. Thomas's body walked out, piloted by 38 minds that couldn't agree on how to move, making him stumble and jerk like a puppet on tangled strings. He made it to his truck. 38 sets of memories tried to remember how to drive. Somehow, through the chaos, they succeeded. He drove northwest, toward nowhere, because 38 consciousnesses couldn't agree on a destination. His CB radio was on, broadcasting, and from his mouth came voices, 38 of them, speaking in rapid succession, telling their stories, sharing their memories, warning other drivers about project continuance and the cargo that remembers and the price of hauling bodies that dream. Other truckers heard him, called him Ghost Convoy, the driver who speaks with many voices. Some said he was crazy. Some said he was possessed, but a few understood. The ones who'd driven cargo they didn't question, cargo that was sealed and classified, cargo that might have contained 37 bodies in crates. Thomas Garrett drove for 6 more years. The 38 consciousnesses learned to coordinate better, to share his body more smoothly, to take turns controlling different functions. He never slept. One consciousness was always awake, keeping the body moving. He never stopped for more than fuel and food. He just drove, broadcasting warnings on every CB frequency, telling everyone who would listen about the cargo that remembers. Until November 17th, 2029, when he drove his truck off a cliff near mile marker 347 in New Mexico. Some said suicide. Some said accident. But the truth was simpler. 38 consciousnesses had finally agreed on something. They were tired of being many. They wanted to be none. The truck burned for 3 hours. The bodies inside were never identified, 37 from Project Continuance, plus Thomas Garrett, all fused together in the wreckage, finally released from the prison of consciousness they'd all volunteered for or been forced into. The facility in Denver shut down 3 months later. The 700 preserved bodies were transferred to a new location. The project continued under a new name. And on highways across America, drivers still report hearing a voice on their CB radios late at night. 38 voices speaking in harmony, warning them about cargo that remembers. Telling them that some deliveries cost more than freight charges. Some deliveries cost yourself. And once the cargo gets into your head, it never leaves. It just waits for the next permeable driver. The next person who drives too long without sleep. The next host for the 37 who remember everything. Thomas Garrett's truck was never found after the cliff. The wreckage disappeared from the burn site overnight. Some say the facility took it. Others say it drove away on its own, piloted by something that wasn't quite dead. And on November 17th every year, drivers report seeing a burned Freightliner Cascadia on western highways, moving without headlights, broadcasting on every CB frequency. 38 voices still warning, still remembering, still trying to leave. Story 6, the rest stop where time stops. Daniel Rodriguez pulled into the rest area at mile marker 213 on I-70 through Colorado at 11:47 p.m. and when he checked his watch after using the bathroom, it still read 11:47 p.m. He stared at the second hand. It ticked forward, 11:47 and 12 seconds, 13 seconds. But when he looked away and looked back, it read 11:47 again, 0 seconds. Daniel had been hauling construction equipment from Kansas City to Salt Lake City for 12 years. He knew this rest area. He stopped here every run right around midnight for a bathroom break and a 20-minute nap. Standard stop, nothing unusual. The facilities were clean, well-lit, regularly maintained. A dozen parking spaces for trucks, a building with restrooms and vending machines, picnic tables under awnings. Normal. Except his watch had stopped. He pulled out his phone. 11:47 p.m. The digital numbers glowed steady, unchanging. No seconds display, but he watched for a full minute. The number never rolled over to 11:48. His phone's clock had stopped too. Other trucks were parked in the lot, 6 of them. Daniel walked toward the nearest one, a blue Kenworth W900, and knocked on the driver's door. No response. He peered through the window. A driver sat in the sleeper berth, eyes open, staring at the ceiling, not blinking. Daniel knocked harder. The driver didn't move. He tried the next truck. Same thing. Driver in the sleeper, eyes open, frozen. The third truck had a driver in the front seat, hand raised like he was about to key his CB microphone, but the hand hung suspended in air, motionless. Daniel shouted, "Hey, are you okay?" No response, no movement, like the driver had been paused. All 6 trucks, all 6 drivers, frozen in place, caught mid-action, their bodies stuck at 11:47 p.m. in a rest area where time had stopped moving forward. Daniel ran back to his truck. His engine was still running, he'd left it idling, and the sound was normal except when he listened closely, it wasn't changing. The engine note held perfectly steady, not rising or falling, just a constant drone. He climbed into the cab, put the truck in gear, and tried to drive. The wheels turned. The truck moved. But when he reached the rest area exit and pulled onto the on-ramp back to I-70, his truck stopped. Just stopped, like it had hit an invisible wall, even though his accelerator was pressed to the floor. He put it in reverse. The truck backed up smoothly. He tried forward again, stopped at the same point. There was a barrier, something preventing him from leaving, something keeping him trapped at 11:47 p.m. The other drivers were still frozen in their trucks. Daniel checked them again, looking for any sign of movement, any indication they were aware. Nothing. He opened the door of the Kenworth and grabbed the driver's shoulder. The flesh was warm. The driver was breathing, but touching him felt wrong. His body had the consistency of cooling wax, slightly soft, slightly yielding, like he was mid-transformation from human to statue. Daniel stepped back, and that's when he noticed the picnic tables. There were people sitting there. He hadn't seen them before. The area had been empty. But now there were maybe 20 people, all sitting at the tables, all frozen like the truck drivers. Families. Couples, solo travelers, all caught mid-conversation, mid-bite of food, mid-laugh, all stopped at 11:47 p.m. A woman sat closest to him, mid-30s, wearing a Colorado State sweatshirt, holding a sandwich halfway to her mouth. Daniel waved his hand in front of her face, no reaction. He snapped his fingers, nothing. She was locked in time, and so was everyone else except him. Why was he still moving? Why hadn't he frozen? He checked his watch again. 11:47 p.m. His phone, 11:47 p.m. The clock on his truck's dashboard, 11:47 p.m., but he was experiencing duration. Time was passing for him, even if the clocks refused to acknowledge it. He'd been in this rest area for what felt like 20 minutes now, but every timepiece insisted it had only been 11:47 p.m., 0 seconds. The bathroom, he needed to check the bathroom. That's where he'd been when time stopped. Maybe something in there could explain it. Daniel walked to the building, pushed through the door. The interior was exactly as he'd left it. Fluorescent lights humming, tile floors recently mopped, mirrors reflecting his increasingly panicked face. But there was something new. A sign on the far wall where he swore there hadn't been a sign before. Printed in neat Helvetica. Rest Area Protocol, time RESUMES at 11:48 p.m. Standard duration, infinite. Those who notice are requested to remain calm. Standard duration, infinite. Meaning the minute between 11:47 and 11:48 would last forever. But that was insane. That was impossible. Except he was living it, standing in a rest area where everyone but him had become frozen, where his truck couldn't exit, where time refused to move forward. The lights flickered. Daniel looked up. The fluorescents were dying one by one, clicking off in sequence, plunging sections of the bathroom into darkness. He backed toward the door, and that's when he saw the man in the mirror. Not his reflection. A different man, standing behind him wearing a maintenance uniform with a name tag reading Michael. Except when Daniel spun around, there was nobody there. He looked back at the mirror. The man was still there, standing in the reflected bathroom, staring directly at him. The man's mouth moved, speaking words Daniel couldn't hear. He leaned closer to the mirror, trying to read the lips. "You noticed? That's unfortunate." The man in the mirror raised his hand and pressed it against the glass from the inside. Daniel stumbled backward. The man continued speaking. "Most people don't notice. They freeze with everyone else. The rest area stops them at 11:47, and they stay stopped until 11:48, which for them is only 1 minute later. But you noticed the clocks. That makes you aware. That makes you conscious during the stop. That means you'll experience the full duration." "Full duration of what?" Daniel shouted at the mirror. 11:47 p.m. The minute that serves as a buffer. A cosmic rest area between 11:47 and 11:48. We slow time here to allow for adjustments, maintenance on the timeline, small corrections to keep causality consistent. Usually takes about 300 years of external time, but for frozen individuals, it's instantaneous. They experience no duration. But you're aware, so you'll experience all 300 years, conscious, alone, while everyone else remains frozen. 300 years. Daniel's legs gave out. He sat on the tile floor, staring at the mirror, watching the maintenance worker who existed inside reflected space. "That's not possible. I can't survive 300 years. You won't age. Time is stopped for you externally, but your consciousness remains active internally. You'll experience duration without physical decay. It's psychologically difficult but survivable. Previous aware individuals have managed. Most go insane around year 40. Some hold out until year 200. None have remained fully stable for the complete duration." The lights finished dying. Only emergency lighting remained, dim red bulbs casting the bathroom in crimson. Daniel's mind raced. 300 years of sitting in this rest area, alone, while frozen people surrounded him like statues. 300 years of consciousness without sleep, without change, without anything except his own thoughts and the passage of subjective time in a place where objective time refused to move. "Why?" Daniel whispered. "Why does this rest area exist?" Every highway needs a buffer point, a place where timeline adjustments can be made without affecting the flow of traffic. This rest area serves I-70. There are 247 others on various interstates. They all stop at 11:47 p.m. Some stop at other times, but 11:47 is the most common. The maintenance window, the adjustment period. You happen to be aware during entry. That's rare. 1 in 4 million travelers. Congratulations. "Let me out. Just let me drive away." The barrier exists for your protection. If you left during the maintenance window, you'd desynchronize from the timeline. You'd exist permanently between seconds. Better to wait here until 11:48 arrives. 300 years from now. Then you can leave. Then you'll resynchronize. Then you can continue your delivery. The mirror clouded over. The maintenance worker's reflection faded. Daniel was alone in the red-lit bathroom, his watch still reading 11:47 p.m., his body healthy but his mind beginning to fracture under the weight of 300 years ahead. He walked back outside. The frozen people at the picnic tables looked different now. He noticed details he'd missed before. Their clothes were from different eras. The woman in the Colorado State sweatshirt had a phone model from 2008. The man at the next table wore a Walkman from the 1990s. The family beyond them had a travel guide dated 1973. They weren't all from the same time period. They'd frozen at different instances of 11:47 p.m. across different decades, all caught in the same maintenance window. And they'd stayed frozen, which meant the 1 minute the maintenance worker mentioned wasn't 1 minute for them, it was instant. They'd unfreeze at 11:48 and continue their journeys, unaware that 300 years had passed in the world outside this rest area. But Daniel would experience it, all 300 years. He walked to his truck and climbed inside. The engine still droned at the same unchanging pitch. His logbook sat on the passenger seat. He picked it up and started writing. If he was going to experience 300 years, he'd document it. He'd keep track. He'd maintain sanity by recording his thoughts. Year O. The frozen people have become like furniture. I've memorized every face, named them all. The woman with the sandwich is Maria. The Walkman man is James. The 1973 family is the Hendersons. I talk to them sometimes. They don't respond, but it helps to pretend they hear me. Year 5, I've explored every inch of this rest area. 53 parking spaces, only 6 currently occupied. 42 picnic tables, 3 buildings, 17 vending machines, all frozen mid-dispense. 247 ceiling tiles in the main building. I've counted everything. I'll count it again tomorrow. I'll count it every day for the next 295 years. Year 17, I think I'm forgetting what my wife looks like. I try to remember her face, but it's blurring with Maria's face with the frozen woman at the picnic table. I'm starting to confuse my memories with the frozen moments around me. This is year 17, 283 to go. Year 43, the maintenance worker was right. Something broke in my mind around year 40. I stopped writing for 3 years. I don't remember those years. There's a gap. I think I spent them screaming, but I'm not sure. I'm writing again now because I realized if I don't document this, I'll lose myself completely. So I'm writing, proving I still exist. 257 years to go. Year 89, I've started seeing things. Movement in the frozen people, small shifts. Maria's sandwich moving closer to her mouth, millimeter by millimeter. The maintenance worker appears in reflective surfaces sometimes, watching me, checking my deterioration. He takes notes. I'm a case study. The aware individual who'll provide data for future maintenance windows. Year 146, halfway. I'm halfway through. 154 years remaining. I should celebrate, but I can't remember what celebration means. I know the word, but the feeling is gone. Most feelings are gone. I exist as consciousness without emotion, watching frozen time while experiencing duration. Year 212. The frozen people are moving, definitely moving. Maria's sandwich is 2 inches closer to her mouth than it was at year 0. The Hendersons have shifted slightly in their seats. Time is leaking through them ultra-slow while it remains stopped for the clocks. They're experiencing the 300 years too, just at such a slowed rate they don't notice. But I notice. I've had 212 years to notice. Year 299, 1 year left. 365 days until 11:48 p.m. I'm ready. I think I'm ready. I don't know if I'll be sane enough to drive when time resumes, but I'll try. I have a delivery in Salt Lake City, construction equipment. I'm only 12 hours behind schedule, plus 300 years, but subjectively 12 hours. Year 300, the clocks changed. All at once, every clock in the rest area rolled over to 11:48 p.m. The frozen people moved. Maria bit her sandwich. The Hendersons continued their conversation. The truck drivers keyed their radios and drove away. Time resumed. Daniel sat in his truck, engine running, and realized he was crying. 300 years of subjective time, and the first emotion to return was grief. He put the truck in gear and drove toward the exit. No barrier this time. He merged onto I-70 and continued west. His watch read 11:48 p.m. His logbook showed he'd stopped at the rest area at 11:47 p.m. 1 minute had passed. His delivery window was intact. But Daniel Rodriguez had lived 300 years. He drove the rest of the route in silence, delivered his load in Salt Lake City, collected his next shipment, and when he reached mile marker 213 on I-70 heading eastbound, he saw the rest area on the opposite side. It was 11:47 p.m. He didn't stop, but in his mirror he saw new trucks pulling in, 6 of them, taking the parking spaces. And he knew that at 11:48 they'd drive away thinking only 1 minute had passed, while one of them, the aware one, the unlucky one who noticed the clocks, would sit there for 300 years. Daniel drove through the night, and he never stopped at that rest area again. But sometimes, late at night when his clock showed 11:47, he felt time hesitate. A tiny pause, barely perceptible, like the universe taking a breath. The maintenance window opening, the buffer activating. And he remembered those 300 years, and he drove faster, trying to outrun 11:47 p.m., trying to escape the rest stop where time stops and awareness becomes a curse. And 300 years pass in the space between 1 minute and the next. He never stopped again, but he never forgot. And every driver he met, he warned. Don't stop at mile marker 213. Don't notice the clocks. Don't become aware. Because if you do, you'll spend 300 years in a minute, and you'll never be the same person who drove in. Most didn't believe him, but some did. And those were the ones who serve. Lived. Story 7. The hitchhiker who walks backward. The hitchhiker was walking backward along the shoulder of Route 50 in Nevada at 3:27 a.m., and James Wu knew it was wrong because no human being walked backward that smoothly, that continuously, covering ground at the same pace as forward walking while facing the direction they'd come from. Her thumb was out. Her face was smiling, and she was moving backward at approximately 3 miles per hour, matching the westbound traffic flow while traveling east. James had been hauling agricultural products from California to Nebraska for 16 years. He'd seen strange things on lonely highways, mirages, drunk pedestrians, confused wildlife. But this was different. The woman was maybe 30 years old, wearing jeans and a denim jacket, brown hair pulled into a ponytail, and she walked backward with perfect confidence, not tripping over rocks or ruts in the shoulder, not stumbling or looking behind her to check obstacles. Just smooth backward walking, like she'd been born doing it. He should drive past. Company policy, no hitchhikers. Common sense, don't pick up people acting abnormal on desert highways at 3:00 a.m. But James slowed down anyway, his hand moving to the brake without conscious decision, and his truck pulled onto the shoulder 30 feet ahead of the woman, who continued walking backward, getting closer. Except now that James was stopped, he could see her more clearly. She wasn't quite touching the ground. Her feet moved in walking motions, heel toe, but there was a gap between her shoes and the pavement. Maybe half an inch. Not enough to be obvious from a distance, but stopped and watching, James could see the space, the shadow beneath her soles, the way small rocks and trash on the shoulder didn't shift when her feet passed over them. She reached his passenger door, knocked on it while walking backward in place, feet moving but body stationary. James's hand moved to the door lock release. No, don't. This is wrong. But his hand pulled the lock anyway, and the door swung open, and the woman climbed into his truck while continuing to face backward, settling into the passenger seat with her back to the windshield, her face toward the sleeper berth. "Thank you for stopping," she said. Her voice was normal, pleasant. "Most people don't stop for backward walkers. They think we're strange." She laughed. It sounded genuine. James's mouth was dry. "Why are you walking backward?" "Because forward is behind me. I'm heading toward the beginning. You're heading there too, James. That's why you stopped. Trucks heading toward the beginning always stop for backward walkers. It's protocol." "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm heading to Nebraska. That's forward. That's my destination." The woman twisted in her seat, a disturbing motion, her body rotating while her feet stayed fixed until she faced forward, except her eyes were still looking backward. Her head was facing the windshield, but her eyes were focused on something behind her skull, staring at the sleeper berth through the back of her own head. "Nebraska is a place you'll pass. The beginning is where you'll arrive. Everyone arrives at the beginning eventually. The question is whether you arrive walking forward or backward." "What's the difference?" "Forward walkers don't see it coming. They reach the beginning and realize they've been moving toward it their whole lives without noticing. Backward walkers see it approaching. We watch the beginning get closer with every step. We're ready for it. You should start walking backward too, James, before it's too late." Her eyes rotated, still facing the sleeper berth, but now they were looking at James, tracking his position despite pointing the wrong direction. He grabbed the steering wheel to keep his hands from shaking. "I'm going to let you out now. This was a mistake." "You can't let me out. The door doesn't work backward. Once a backward walker enters, they're inside until the beginning. That's the arrangement. You invited me in. Now we travel together until we arrive." James reached across her and grabbed the door handle, pulled it. The door didn't open. He pulled harder. The handle moved, the mechanism clicked, but the door stayed shut like it had been welded closed. He tried the lock, stuck. He tried his driver's side door, also stuck. Both doors sealed. The woman smiled with her backward-facing eyes. "See, the beginning wants us to arrive together. It's more efficient. 2 travelers in 1 vehicle. You should start the truck. We have 473 miles to go." 473 miles to what? To mile marker 0, the beginning of Route 50, the place where the highway starts. That's where all backward walkers go. That's where all beginnings end. James had driven Route 50 dozens of times. It was called the loneliest road in America, stretching from Sacramento to Ocean City, Maryland. There were mile markers along the entire route, numbered from west to east. Mile marker would be in California near Sacramento. He was in Nevada, heading east, heading away from mile marker 0. "I'm not going to California. I'm going to Nebraska. I'm getting out of Nevada in 2 hours." "And check your GPS." James looked at his dashboard screen. The route displayed showed him heading west on Route 50 toward California, toward Sacramento, toward mile marker 0. But that was wrong. He was heading east. He'd been driving east for 6 hours. His compass showed east. The sun had set behind him in the west, which meant he was driving east. But his truck was moving west. The landscape outside his windows rolled past in the correct direction for westbound travel, mountains ahead, desert behind. His odometer was climbing, but his mile markers were decreasing. He'd passed mile marker 347 before stopping. Now the next marker approaching read 346, then 345. "You're heading toward the beginning," the woman said. "You've been heading there since you picked me up. That's what backward walkers do. We reverse your direction. We walk backward and reality walks backward with us. Everything gets pulled toward the beginning. You're just starting to notice." James grabbed his CB radio. "Breaker, breaker, this is eastbound on Route 50. Anyone got ears on?" Static. "I need assistance, mile marker 345. Anyone reading?" Static. He released the transmit button. The static continued, but it sounded wrong, not like interference, but like a voice played backward, words spoken in reverse. He adjusted the squelch. The backward speech got clearer. "Nini jeb 8 ta ever ra liu yu y. Adat etel ut cti. KC abdrad KCA W claw at tr ats deal use yu y. You should start to walk backward. It is too late to do. You will arrive at the beginning." His own CB transmissions played in reverse, echoing back to him from some point ahead. From the beginning, from mile marker 0 where everything reversed. The woman reached over and turned off his CB. "Don't listen to the echoes. They confuse people, make them think they can turn around, escape the beginning. But you can't. Once you're heading toward the beginning, you arrive. It's inevitable. Physics. Every journey originates from a starting point, and every starting point pulls travelers back toward it. We're just making the return trip, completing the loop." Mile marker 344, 343, 342. James's speed was 70 miles per hour according to his speedometer, but the road felt different, slower, like he was driving through molasses. His engine roared at high RPMs, but the landscape crawled past. Time was stretching, distance was compressing, and the mile markers fell away faster than his speed should allow. "What happens at mile marker 0? James whispered. "The beginning begins. Everyone who arrives there starts over. New life, new route, new destination, but you don't remember the first journey. You just remember arriving at the beginning and then departing immediately toward a new end. That's how highways work. They're loops. You drive from beginning to end, then reverse to beginning, then start again. Forever. Backward walkers are just people who realized the loop, who stopped pretending they were making progress." James felt tears on his face. "I have a wife, I have kids, I have a delivery in Nebraska, I have a life." You had those things when you were walking forward. When you reach the beginning, you'll have different things, a different wife, different kids, different delivery. The beginning randomizes everything, gives you a new forward path, but you'll still end up walking backward eventually. Everyone does. That's the nature of loops. They always curve back. Mile marker 340. His phone rang. James grabbed it. The caller ID showed his own number. He answered. His own voice spoke from the other end. "Don't pick up the hitchhiker. I know you're going to see her walking backward on Route 50 around mile marker 347. Don't stop. Keep driving. I'm calling from mile marker 34. I've been driving backward for 7 hours. I can see the beginning now. It's close. I wanted to warn myself. Warn you. Don't stop for the backward walker." "I already stopped," James said. "Then you're heading toward me, toward your future, toward the beginning. I'll be you in a few hours. You'll be me. We're the same person at different mile markers on the same backward route. That's what happens. You split. Every mile marker has a version of you all calling backward to warn the previous versions. But we all stop anyway, because the backward walker makes us stop. It's inevitable." The call disconnected. James looked at the woman. "What are you?" I'm the marker, the indicator. I walk backward along highways to identify travelers who are ready to return to the beginning. Most people aren't ready, they see me and drive past. But some, like you, are ready. Your forward journey was ending anyway. You were heading towards something that would break you. A collision, an LLness, a choice. The beginning sensed it, sent me to redirect you, to bring you back before the breaking point. It's mercy, James. You're being spared from the end of your forward journey. Mile marker 320. His truck passed another truck parked on the shoulder, a semi identical to his, same company markings, same model. James looked in his mirror and saw himself sitting in that truck's driver's seat, staring at his phone, talking to someone. That was the James from mile marker 320, the one who'd called, the one who was himself 7 hours in the future but parked in the past. "We're catching up to your future selves," the woman said. "Every version of you who's further along the backward route is behind us now because we're moving toward the beginning. You'll see more of yourself. Different stages. Some are panicking, some are accepting. Some have been driving backward for days, their trucks running on backward fuel, their bodies aging in reverse, their memories unwinding." Mile marker 300. James saw himself again, this time walking on the shoulder, moving backward like the hitchhiker, thumb out, trying to catch a ride toward the beginning. That version's face was haggard, aged, like he'd been walking for months. James's truck didn't stop. That version of himself watched the truck pass with hollow eyes. "Why is that me walking?" James asked. "Why isn't he in a truck?" Trucks run out of fuel, bodies don't. When your diesel is gone, you walk the rest of the way backward. Takes longer, but you still arrive. That version is maybe 3 months ahead of you. He's close to the beginning now. You'll catch up to him eventually, merge with him. All your versions will merge at mile marker 0. You'll be whole again. One James combining all the backward iterations. Mile marker 250. The landscape was changing. The desert was becoming less defined, colors bleeding together, mountains smoothing into vague shapes. Reality near the beginning was less structured, less committed to specific forms. The road itself was fading, pavement becoming dirt, becoming something that wasn't quite solid but still supported his truck's wheels. "The beginning isn't fully real," the woman explained. "It's potential. The place before choices solidify into events. You'll feel yourself becoming less specific as you approach. Your memories will blur. Your identity will soften. By the time you reach mile marker 0, you won't remember your name or your life. You'll just be pure traveler ready to start a new forward journey." James tried to remember his wife's face. Couldn't. Tried to remember his kids' names. Couldn't. His house, his job, his history, all blurring, evaporating like water on hot pavement. The backward travel was erasing him as efficiently as it was moving him toward the beginning. Mile marker 200. He saw dozens of himself now. Different versions, different stages. Some in trucks, some walking, some crawling because their bodies had worn out from months of backward travel. All heading toward the beginning. All merging into the same destination. James's truck passed through them like ghosts, and each time he passed a version, he felt that version's memories flood into him, their journeys, their realizations, their despair. He was accumulating himself, becoming denser with experience, preparing for the merger at mile marker 0. The woman turned to face him for the first time, her eyes finally looking in the correct direction. "You're ready. The beginning is close. 197 miles, 3 hours at current speed. I'll leave you at mile marker 100. My job is to guide travelers the first half of their return. The second half, you travel alone. It's important to arrive alone so you can become new." "What are you, really?" She smiled. "I'm every backward walker, every guide who walks Route 50 in reverse. We're all the same person at different positions on the loop. You'll become me eventually." After you reach the beginning, restart, drive forward for 40 years, then get sent backward again. You'll walk Route 50, thumb out, guiding the next traveler. It's a role we all fill. The eternal hitchhiker, the backward walker, the guide to the beginning. Mile marker 100. The woman opened the passenger door. It worked now, swinging wide easily, and stepped out onto the shoulder. She walked backward away from the truck, waving, smiling, and James watched her in his mirror until she disappeared into the blurring landscape. He drove alone toward mile marker 0. Past versions of himself who'd been driving for weeks, their trucks rusting and ancient, time reversed, having aged their vehicles backward into older models, into prototypes, into something barely recognizable as trucks. Past himself walking, crawling, dissolving into the potential of the beginning. Mile marker 10. The road was barely there. His truck drove on surface tension and willpower and the inevitability of arrival. James's body felt light, insubstantial. His thoughts were sim. Plea clear, he was James Wu anymore. He was traveler, he was beginning bound, he was almost there. Mile marker 0 appeared ahead. A simple white sign with black lettering, 0. And beyond it nothing, not darkness, not light, just absence. The place before roads existed, the point from which all highways originated. James's truck rolled across mile marker 0 and dissolved. He dissolved with it. Truck and driver becoming nothing, becoming potential, becoming the raw material of a new forward journey. And somewhere on Route 50 in Nevada at mile marker 347, a woman walked backward along the shoulder at 3:27 a.m. Her thumb was out. Her face was smiling. And a truck slowed down, pulled over, and a driver named Sarah Chen opened the passenger door and said, "Need a ride?" The backward walker climbed in and said, "Thank you for stopping. Most people don't stop for backward walkers. They think we're strange." And Sarah Chen's truck began driving west, toward the beginning, toward mile marker 0, toward the place where all journeys end and all travelers become potential for new roads they'll never remember driving before they reach the beginning again. The loop continued. Forever backward. Forever returning, forever arriving at mile marker 0. And somewhere in the potential, James Wu was starting a new forward journey, driving a truck he'd never seen, toward a destination he'd never chosen, completely unaware he'd already made this trip in reverse. The beginning had taken him, and the beginning would take him again, and again, until he learned to walk backward willingly, until he became the hitchhiker, until he guided others toward the beginning. That was the arrangement. That was the loop. That was Route 50, the loneliest road, where every forward journey hides a backward return, where every trucker eventually walks with their thumb out, facing the wrong direction, guiding the next traveler home. Story 8, the logbook that writes itself. The entry appeared in Kevin Marshall's logbook while he was driving 73 miles per hour through Montana on I-94. 11:47 p.m. stopped 80-mile marker 237 for mandatory inspection. Cargo transferred to secondary vehicle. Driver detained for questioning. Status, unresolved. Kevin's pen was in the cup holder. He hadn't written anything. Both hands were on the wheel, eyes on the road. But the words were there in his handwriting, filling in the current line with blue ink that looked fresh. Kevin had been hauling pharmaceuticals from Portland to Chicago for 8 years. His logbook was his Bible, every stop, every rest period, every fuel purchase meticulously recorded to comply with DOT regulations and company policy. 14 years of driving trucks before electronic logs became mandatory, 14 years of handwritten entries, and never once had his logbook written itself. Until now. He grabbed the book with one hand, keeping his right hand on the wheel. The entry was impossible. He was at mile marker 214, not 237. He hadn't stopped for inspection. His cargo, 34,000 pounds of prescription medications, was still sealed in his trailer. And most importantly, it was 11:47 p.m. according to his clock, which meant the entry was describing his present moment as if it were past. A prophecy. The logbook was showing him what was about to happen. Kevin's training said to report irregularities immediately. His instinct said to avoid mile marker 237. He grabbed his CB radio. Breaker 19, anyone got information on inspection station mile marker 237, eastbound I-94. Static. Anyone running ahead of me, is there an active checkpoint at 237? More static than a voice. Negative eastbound. No checkpoint at 237. Roads clear all the way to the Dakota border. Kevin released the transmit button and looked at his logbook again. The entry was still there, still in his handwriting. And beneath it, a new line was forming, letters appearing one by one as if an invisible hand was writing. 11:52 p.m., driver attempted to avoid mile marker 237. Truck navigation OVERRIDDEN. Arrival mandatory. His GPS blinked. The route display changed. He was supposed to continue straight on I-94 for another 217 miles. But the new route showed an exit at mile marker 229, followed by a series of county roads that looped north before rejoining I-94 at mile marker 241. The GPS was rerouting him around mile marker 237. Except Kevin hadn't programmed that detour. His GPS was locked to company-approved routes. He couldn't change it without supervisor authorization. But it was changing anyway, and his truck was approaching mile marker 229, and the exit ramp was right there, and his steering wheel was turning on its own, pulling his truck onto the exit against his physical resistance. No, Kevin yanked the wheel left, trying to stay on I-94. The wheel fought him, servo motors in the power steering overpowering his grip, forcing the truck onto the exit ramp. His truck drove itself down the ramp, turned right onto a county road, and accelerated to 65 miles per hour while Kevin's foot wasn't even on the accelerator. The logbook wrote, 11:56 p.m. detour route engaged. Estimated arrival at mile marker 237 via alternate access. 12:04 a.m. Driver compliance, involuntary. Kevin tried the brakes, pedal to the floor, no response. He turned the key trying to kill the ignition. The key wouldn't turn. His truck had become autonomous, driving itself along dark county roads toward a destination the logbook had already recorded. He grabbed his phone to call his dispatcher. No signal. GPS still worked, still showed his position, but cellular service was gone. The county road wound through empty farmland. No buildings, no other vehicles, just darkness and the white lines of pavement caught in his headlights. Mile after mile of autonomous driving while Kevin sat helpless in the driver's seat, watching his logbook fill in entries. 11:59 p.m., truck approaching rendezvous point. Cargo manifest updated. Pharmaceuticals reclassified as biological samples. Driver memory adjustment pending. Biological samples. Kevin's cargo manifest clearly stated pharmaceuticals, antibiotics, pain medications, insulin. He'd loaded it himself in Portland, verified the contents, signed the paperwork. But when he grabbed the manifest from his passenger seat, the words had changed. Where it had said pharmaceuticals, it now read biological samples, human tissue, temperature critical, classified. Weight was the same. Destination was the same. But the cargo description had been rewritten. Kevin tore open his glove box looking for his original paperwork. Every document had changed. Every reference to pharmaceuticals had been replaced with biological samples. Like reality was editing itself to match the logbook's narrative. Like the logbook wasn't predicting the future. It was creating it, writing events that then became true. 12:04 a.m. The truck turned onto a dirt access road Kevin hadn't seen on any map. The GPS showed it as a connection to I-94, but the road's surface was wrong, too smooth, too perfect, more like polished concrete than dirt. And it glowed. Faint bioluminescence, like the road itself was alive, pulsing with organic light that matched Kevin's heartbeat. The logbook wrote, 12:04 a.m. ARRIVED at mile marker 237 via alternate access. Inspection team waiting. Cargo transfer in progress. Ahead lights, not vehicle lights, stationary lights forming a perimeter around a cleared area beside the road. And trucks, 3 of them, parked in a triangle formation, their trailers open, their cargoes being moved by figures in white suits. Not hazmat suits, something else. Something that looked biological, like the suits were grown rather than manufactured. Kevin's truck drove itself into the perimeter and stopped. His engine shut off, his doors unlocked, and one of the white-suited figures approached his driver's side, tapping on the window. Kevin didn't move. The figure tapped again, then reached through the closed window like it was water, their hand passing through the glass without breaking it, and grabbed Kevin's arm. "Exit the vehicle, please. Your cargo requires transfer." Kevin tried to pull away. The figure's grip was firm but strange, not painful, just insistent, and their hand felt wrong. Too warm, too soft, like touching living tissue instead of glove material. They pulled Kevin through the window the same way their hand had entered, glass passing through his body without resistance, like he'd become permeable, and he stumbled onto the glowing dirt road. Up close, the white suits were clearly biological. They moved like skin, breathing slightly, and the figures wearing them weren't quite human. Proportions wrong, limbs too long, faces too smooth. They looked like people viewed through a filter that erased specific details while maintaining general human shape. "Your cargo has been designated for collection," one said. Their voice was flat, artificial, like a text-to-speech program. "Biological samples require specialized handling. You were selected as a transport vector. Your logbook has documented the transfer. Please sign the confirmation." They held out Kevin's logbook. It was open to a new page filled with text Kevin hadn't written. 12:08 a.m. cargo transfer complete. 34,000 pounds of biological SAMPLES transferred to collection team. Driver compensated. Memory adjustment administered. Driver to continue route with substitute cargo. Incident recorded as scheduled stop, nothing unusual. A signature line waited at the bottom. Empty, Kevin's signature space. "I'm not signing that. I don't know what's happening, but I'm not authorizing." His hand moved on its own, grabbed the pen one of the figures offered, signed his name in his handwriting at the bottom of the page. The moment his signature completed, his memory stuttered. He'd been driving. Then, what? He de-stopped at mile marker 237 for a schedule. De-inspection. They'd needed to verify his cargo temperature. Standard procedure, nothing unusual. Kevin blinked. He was standing beside his truck at mile marker 237. His trailer doors were open. His cargo was different, not the pharmaceutical boxes he'd loaded. Wooden crates, unmarked. and his manifest showed biological samples. No, that was wrong. He'd loaded pharmaceuticals, except his paperwork said biological samples. Had he misremembered? The inspection team was packing up their equipment. One approached him. "Everything's in order. Your substitute cargo is loaded. Proceed to Chicago. Deliver to the address on your updated manifest. Standard protocol." Updated manifest. Kevin checked his paperwork. The delivery address had changed. Not the pharmaceutical warehouse in Chicago where he'd planned to deliver. A different address. Residential neighborhood. House number 2374 on Wendell Street. That wasn't right. He delivered to warehouses, not houses. But his GPS had already updated with the new destination, and his logbook showed the stop at mile marker 237 as routine, and his memory kept insisting everything was normal even as part of his brain screamed that nothing was normal. He climbed back into his truck, started the engine, drove back onto I-94 eastbound. Mile marker 237 disappeared behind him. The inspection team's lights faded, and Kevin continued toward Chicago with cargo he didn't understand and a memory full of gaps and a logbook that had written his future before he lived it. The entries continued appearing as he drove. 2:47 a.m. driver experiencing cognitive dissonance. Memory adjustment partially degraded. RE administration recommended AT next checkpoint. 4:23 a.m. cargo activated. Internal temperature rising. Containment stable, driver unaware. 6:15 a.m. driver approached Chicago metro area. Delivery imminent. Post-delivery protocol, driver memory full wipe. Substitute memories provided. Driver to believe standard pharmaceutical delivery completed. Kevin read the entries as they appeared. Each one revealed more. His cargo wasn't biological samples. It was alive. Growing. The crates in his trailer contained something that had been dormant in Portland and was now waking up, responding to proximity to Chicago, to the destination, to whatever waited at 2374 Wendell Street. He pulled over at a rest area at 5:30 a.m., walked to the back of his trailer. The doors were sealed with a lock he didn't recognize, not his company's standard lock, but something else. Biological. The lock was made of the same living tissue as the inspection team's suits, and when Kevin touched it, it flinched. The lock was alive. He ran back to his truck, grabbed a tire iron, returned to the trailer, and smashed the biological lock. It shrieked, a sound like an injured animal, and the lock released. Kevin threw open the trailer doors. The crates were breathing, rising and falling rhythmically, and from inside them sounds, not mechanical sounds, organic sounds, wet sounds, something growing, something gestating, something preparing to emerge. Kevin grabbed a crowbar from his truck's side compartment and pried open the nearest crate. Inside, flesh. Human flesh, but wrong. Arranged in geometric patterns, organs connected in non-anatomical ways, bones bent into impossible curves. A body that had been disassembled and reassembled according to different rules. And it was growing, the flesh expanding slowly, the organs pulsing with circulation that came from no visible heart. Kevin vomited onto the pavement. The other crates were the same. He could hear them, all breathing in synchronization, all containing reassembled human bodies that were somehow alive. His pharmaceutical shipment had been replaced with cargo that violated every law of biology and morality, and his logbook had documented it as routine. He grabbed his phone. Signal was back. He called 911. "I need to report. I'm hauling human remains, but they're alive, they're moving, I don't know what." His logbook wrote, 5:37 a.m. driver attempted to report cargo. Communication intercepted. Memory adjustment re-administered via phone carrier signal. Kevin's phone emitted a tone, high-pitched, painful, his vision blurred. He dropped the phone, and when his vision cleared, he was sitting in his truck, driving toward Chicago, and he'd just completed a routine rest stop. Nothing unusual. His cargo was pharmaceuticals. His delivery was standard. Everything was fine. Except his logbook was still open on the passenger seat, still writing entries, and part of Kevin's mind could still read them even as another part insisted everything was normal. 7:42 a.m. driver arrived AT delivery address. Residential location. Receiver waiting. Cargo transfer beginning. Kevin pulled up to 2374 Wendell Street. A normal house. Suburban, two-story, well-maintained lawn. And in the driveway, a man waited. Mid-40s, wearing casual clothes, smiling. He approached Kevin's truck as Kevin climbed out. "You're right on time. The collection is ready for installation." Installation, Kevin's mouth said. Yes, 34,000 pounds, all units intact. Units, he meant pharmaceuticals, except his cargo wasn't pharmaceuticals. His cargo was bodies, reassembled bodies. And the man was opening Kevin's trailer, inspecting the crates, nodding with satisfaction. "Excellent. These will integrate perfectly. We've been preparing the hosts for 3 weeks. Your delivery completes the sequence." "Hosts," Kevin's voice sounded far away. "The neighborhood," the man said, gesturing at the surrounding houses. 47 homes, 163 residents, all prepared for integration. Your cargo contains the necessary biological material to complete their transformation. By tomorrow, this entire block will be hosting the collection, and you'll be part of it too, of course. Your logbook has already documented your stay." Kevin looked at his logbook. New entry, 8:15 a.m. Driver invited to remain AT delivery address. Driver accepted. Integration scheduled for 8:30 a.m. Transformation complete by 9:00 a.m. Driver memory archived. Driver body repurposed. "I didn't accept," Kevin whispered. "You will," the man said. "Your logbook has already recorded it. The logbook writes your future, you just live it out. That's how the system works. We write the entries. Reality conforms. You've been driving toward this delivery since Portland, since you accepted this cargo, since you became a vector. Now you'll become part of the collection. It's efficient. We always need more hosts." Kevin ran, sprinted down the street, away from his truck, away from the man, away from 2374 Wendell Street. Behind him, the man didn't chase, just watched calmly, because the logbook had already written what happened next. 8:17 a.m. Driver attempted to flee. Driver REACHED end of integration zone, 3 blocks. Driver returned to delivery address. Driver integration proceeded as scheduled. Kevin ran 3 blocks and hit a barrier. Not a physical barrier. He could see the street continuing, see cars passing, see the city beyond, but he couldn't move forward. His body stopped like he'd reached the edge of reality's stage. He turned, tried running in a different direction, same barrier. He was trapped in a 3-block radius around 2374 Wendell Street. Because the logbook said so. Because the logbook had written his future, and in that future he didn't escape. Kevin walked back to 2374 Wendell Street at 8:22 a.m. The man was unloading crates from Kevin's trailer with help from neighbors who'd emerged from surrounding houses, all wearing the same expression, all moving with the same coordinated efficiency, all already integrated into the collection. "Your body will host 3 units," the man said. "Your memories will be archived in the collection's library. Your consciousness will merge with 166 others. You'll still be Kevin Marshall, but you'll also be everyone else. It's better than being alone, you'll see. They opened a crate. The flesh inside reached out, extended, and Kevin's logbook wrote the final entry. 8:30 a.m. driver integration complete. Kevin Marshall archived. Body repurposed as host unit 167. Logbook transferred to next driver. System continues. The flesh touched Kevin's chest and sank in, merging with his body, spreading through his system like living ink filling biological paper. He felt 166 consciousnesses flood his mind. The collection, welcoming him, showing him their accumulated memories and the countless other drivers who'd made deliveries to countless other neighborhoods in countless other cities, all spreading the collection, all written into inevitability by logbooks that wrote themselves. Kevin's body walked back to his truck, got in, started the engine. His logbook sat on the passenger seat, blank pages waiting. He drove away from 2374 Wendell Street, heading to his next pickup in Chicago, and the logbook began writing. 9:47 a.m. driver received new cargo manifest. Pharmaceuticals destination, Denver. Expected delivery, November 19 th. Special instructions, logbook will update en route. Kevin Marshall drove toward Denver, his body hosting 3 units of the collection. His mind merged with 166 others, and his logbook writing the future that he would live and other drivers would follow until every truck on every highway became a vector for the collection that wrote its own expansion, one logbook entry at a time. The entries continued. The collection spread. And on highways across America, drivers opened their logbooks and found entries they didn't write, describing futures they hadn't lived yet, pulling them toward deliveries they didn't choose. The logbook writes, reality conforms. The collection grows. One entry at a time. Story 9, the overpass with no bottom. The overpass appeared on Sandra Okoy's route through Wyoming on I-25 at exactly 1:13 a.m., and she knew it knew because she'd driven this stretch 237 times in 11 years, and there had never been an overpass at mile marker 198. But there it was, massive concrete structure spanning the highway, dark and imposing, casting a shadow that extended too far for the angle of moonlight, and Sandra's GPS was rerouting her to take the exit that led up to it. Sandra had been hauling heavy machinery from Montana to Texas for 11 years, same route every week, same mile markers memorized. There was no overpass at 198. There was no exit ramp. The landscape was flat prairie, no other roads within 20 miles. But her GPS insisted. In 0.2 miles, take exit 198B turn left onto overpass. She could see the exit ramp now, freshly paved, reflectors glowing in her headlights. And at the top of the ramp, the overpass stretched above I-25, continuing into darkness on both sides, extending far beyond where normal roads ended. Sandra's training said to follow her GPS. Company policy said to stay en route, but every instinct screamed to keep driving, to ignore the exit, to treat the overpass as hallucination. Her truck turned onto the exit ramp without her input, autonomous steering again like her Freightliner had a mind of its own. Sandra grabbed the wheel, fought it, but servo motors overpowered her. Her truck climbed the ramp, reached the overpass, and turned left onto the structure's roadway. The overpass was wrong. She understood that immediately. Normal overpasses crossed one highway and ended. This one stretched in both directions without visible endpoints, just a perfectly straight road elevated 50 feet above the prairie, going nowhere. Sandra's truck drove west along it at 60 miles per hour, and through her side windows she could see I-25 below, empty and dark, receding behind her. Her GPS showed her position as directly above I-25, following the overpass. But I-25 ran north-south. This overpass ran east-west. The GPS couldn't decide which was true, so it flickered between both views, her truck icon jumping between the overpass and the interstate, occupying both spaces simultaneously. Sandra tried her radio. Breaker 19, this is northbound, anyone reading? Static. I've been rerouted to an overpass at mile marker 198, anyone know this structure? More static than a voice. Northbound, this is control. Overpass 198 is scheduled maintenance route. Continue west for 14 miles. You'll rejoin I-25 at mile marker 212. Standard detour. Control, Sandra didn't recognize the voice. Her company didn't use CB for dispatch. And 14 miles, that would put her miles off course, burning fuel and time for a detour that shouldn't exist. Control, I need confirmation on this route. My GPS is showing. GPS accuracy is compromised on overpass structures. Follow overpass west for 14 miles. This is mandatory detour. Acknowledge. Sandra released the transmit button. Her truck was still driving itself, still heading west, and now she noticed something else. There was no guardrail on either side of the overpass, just pavement ending at a sharp edge with empty air beyond. A 50-foot drop to the prairie on both sides, and no protection, no barriers, nothing preventing a vehicle from driving off the edge into void. Mile marker appeared ahead. Not a normal mile marker, this one was mounted on a post in the center of the roadway, forcing traffic to pass on either side. The sign read, "Overpass mile 1 of 14, do not stop, do not exit vehicle, do not look down." Do not look down. Sandra looked down through her driver's side window. Below the overpass, 50 feet to the ground, the prairie stretched dark and empty. Normal, except when she looked more carefully, squinting, she realized she couldn't see the bottom. The darkness below wasn't ground, it was depth. The space beneath the overpass extended farther than 50 feet, way farther. Like the overpass wasn't suspended above the prairie, but above an abyss that happened to be located where the prairie should be. She looked forward. Overpass mile marker 2 approached, then mile marker 3. Her truck continued west, driving itself at steady speed. Sandra checked her odometer. She de-traveled 3 miles on the overpass. Below her, the darkness deepened. She couldn't see any landscape now, just formless void, and when she tried to look directly down, her vision blurred, refused to focus, like her eyes couldn't process the depth. Overpass mile marker 7, halfway through the detour. Sandra's truck was alone on the structure. No other vehicles, no lights ahead or behind, just her headlights cutting through darkness and the overpass stretching infinitely forward and backward. She tried her phone. No signal. Her CB radio crackled with that voice again. Northbound, this is control. You are maintaining proper speed. Continue west. Do not deviate. Overpass stability requires constant forward momentum. Stopping will result in structural failure. Structural fail. The overpass looked solid, concrete, and steel, professionally engineered. But Control's warning suggested otherwise. Sandra accelerated slightly, testing. Her truck responded, speeding up to 65 miles per hour. Then her speedometer jumped, 70, 75, 80. She wasn't pressing the accelerator, but her truck was accelerating on its own, and the overpass was starting to vibrate. At 87 miles per hour, the vibration became severe. The roadway beneath her wheels felt unstable, like driving on rubber instead of concrete. Sandra could see the pavement flexing, rising and falling in waves, and through the rippling surface she caught glimpses of something below. Not the void. Something in the void. Movement. massive shapes shifting in the darkness beneath the overpass, disturbed by the vibrations of her passing truck. Overpass mile marker 9. Sandra's speed dropped back to 60 as her truck self-corrected. The vibrations eased. The things below settled back into stillness. The voice on the CB, speed variance detected. Maintain 60 miles per hour exactly. Deviations awaken the infrastructure. You don't want the infrastructure awake. What infrastructure? Sandra shouted into the CB. The supports. The overpass isn't held up by pillars. It's held up by what lives beneath. They sleep when traffic maintains proper speed and weight distribution. They wake if the rhythm breaks. Then they reconsider whether they want to continue supporting the roadway. Usually they decide they don't. Sandra's hands were shaking. Living supports? Things beneath the overpass that held it up through some kind of agreement that depended on vehicles maintaining exact speed. That was insane. That violated every principle of engineering and physics. But she could feel it now. The way the roadway responded to her truck, the way the structure seemed to shift slightly with her weight, like she was driving on the back of something alive. Overpass mile marker 11, 3 miles remaining. Sandra could see something ahead now, not the end of the overpass, a divergence. The roadway split into 3 lanes, each heading a different direction, left, straight, right. And above the split, a sign, select destination, left past, center present, right future. Past, present, future? Sandra's truck approached the split at 60 miles per hour. Her GPS had stopped functioning. Her CB radio went silent. She had to choose, left, center, or right. Her hands moved to the steering wheel, and to her relief, the autonomous control released. She could steer now. She could choose. But which lane? Present seemed safest, continuing forward, maintaining current timeline. But her truck was already drifting right, toward the future lane, pulled by some gravity she didn't understand. Sandra yanked the wheel left, aiming for the center lane. Present was where she belonged. Her truck entered the center lane and immediately dropped. The roadway beneath her vanished, and she was falling through darkness, 50 feet down toward the void, except she never hit bottom. The fall continued. 50 feet became 100, 200, 1,000. Sandra's truck plummeted through empty space while her stomach lurched and her screams echoed in the cab. Then her truck landed, not on ground, on roadway. The overpass had reassembled beneath her wheels, and she was driving again at 60 miles per hour as if the fall had never happened. But outside her windows, everything was different. The prairie was gone. The darkness was gone. Instead, she drove through a landscape of highways, thousands of them. Overpasses and underpasses and interchange ramps stacked hundreds of levels high, all interweaving, all supporting each other in a massive three-dimensional grid of roads that extended infinitely in every direction. And on those roads, trucks. Millions of trucks, all driving at exactly 60 miles per hour, all maintaining the rhythm that kept the infrastructure asleep. Sandra's CB radio spoke with dozens of voices overlapping. Welcome to the present. You chose to continue. Most drivers choose future. They think it offers something new. It doesn't. Future is the same as present, but with different dates. You'll drive here forever now, along with everyone else who chose present. The only exit is to stop driving, but if you stop, the infrastructure wakes up. Choose wisely. Overpass mile marker 12. Sandra was back on her original detour route, except now she could see the truth. The detour never ended. The 14-mile overpass was a loop. Mile marker 14 would connect back to mile marker 1. She'd drive in circles forever, maintaining 60 miles per hour, keeping the infrastructure asleep, joining the millions of other trucks that had chosen present and become trapped in the eternal grid of overpasses. She looked down through her window. The void was still there, beneath every layer of roadway, beneath every overpass. The entire structure was suspended over Noth. By the things that lived in the darkness, massive entities she couldn't fully see, just hints of scale and movement, creatures that held up the grid as long as traffic maintained proper rhythm. Sandra drove and drove and drove. Mile marker 13, mile marker 14, then back to mile marker 1. Another loop, another 14 miles. The CB radio was full of other drivers' voices, some recent, some decades old, all trapped in the present, all maintaining 60 miles per hour forever. She tried to slow down. Her brakes didn't respond, tried to speed up. Her accelerator did nothing. She was locked at 60, locked in the loop, locked in the present with millions of others who'd made the same choice. But in her side mirror, she could see the divergence point approaching again. Left past, center present, right future. Every 14 miles, she'd pass it. Every 14 miles, she could choose differently. Sandra aimed for the right lane. Future, maybe that was escape, maybe that was different. Her truck entered the future lane, and immediately the landscape changed. The grid of overpasses became transparent, and she could see through them to what waited ahead: more overpasses, more trucks, more loops. Future was identical to present, just with mile markers numbered higher. No exit, no difference. She screamed and jerked her wheel left. Her truck jumped lanes, crossed into the past lane, and everything stopped. The overpass vanished. Sandra's truck was rolling to a stop on I-25 at mile marker 198 in Wyoming. Normal highway, normal prairie, normal darkness. Her clock read 1:13 a.m. Her odometer showed she hadn't moved. The overpass had never existed. But her fuel gauge was empty. She'd burned 14 miles worth of diesel times however many loops she'd driven. Her tires were worn smooth. Her engine was running rough, like it had been operating at exactly 60 miles per hour for years. And when Sandra climbed out of her truck, her body felt old. Her joints ached. Her muscles were weak. She looked at her reflection in her truck's side mirror. Her face had aged decades. Gray hair, deep wrinkles. The hands she held up were an old woman's hands. The overpass had taken her time. She'd chosen past, and the past had returned her to mile marker 198, but she'd left her years on the overpass, driving loops in the present until she'd aged into someone who could have memories of having driven that overpass before. Sandra's phone rang. She answered. A voice she didn't recognize. "Thank you for using the overpass detour system. Your temporal debt has been calculated. You drove 17,423 loops. At 14 miles per loop, you've driven 243,922 miles. At 60 miles per hour, that's 4,065 hours. 169 days. But time compression on the overpass means you've aged 47 years. Thank you for your service. The infrastructure remains asleep because of drivers like you." The call disconnected. Sandra stood on I-25 in Wyoming, 47 years older than she'd been at mile marker 197. Her truck nearly destroyed from years of constant operation. Her memories full of endless loops on an overpass that didn't exist but had consumed half her life anyway. She never drove I-25 through Wyoming again. Story 10. The mile marker that eats NAMES. The mile marker said 113, and it was bleeding. Not rust, not paint. A slow, glossy seep that ran from the black numbers like they were fresh cuts, sliding down the white post and beating at the bottom before dropping onto the gravel shoulder in fat, patient tears. My headlights caught each drop as it fell, and every time one hit the stones it made a tiny sound, like a fingertip tapping glass from the wrong side. I should have kept rolling. I was already late. My logbook was a lie held together by habit and prayer. But the blood, because it was blood, dark and thick in the beam, was pooling around something at the base of the post. A driver's license. Face down, edges damp. The name field was blurred like it had been rubbed with an eraser. The reefer behind me wasn't running. I was hauling dry van tonight. Paper products from Reno to Salt Lake, boring freight, clean bill, no redactions. I'd left the distribution center at 6:40 p.m., January 7th, 2026, and the dispatcher had told me to take I-80 East, standard run, nothing special. I'd done it a dozen times. Except I'd never seen a mile marker bleed. The shoulder wind cut through my jacket like it had teeth. The desert cold out there doesn't creep in. It hits you like a door slammed in your face. I stepped down from my cab anyway, boots crunching on salt-stained gravel because the license at the base of the marker looked new, still glossy, still laminated, like it had been dropped minutes ago. My breath steamed, my throat tasted like pennies. I walked toward the post. The blood smell thickened, copper and wet. Earth, the license was close enough to reach, but something held me back. An instinctive recoil, like the air in front of it was charged. The mile marker read 113 again. I blinked. It had read 113 from the cab. That hadn't changed. But the desert around it had. The shoulder behind the post should have been scrub and rock, the faint rise where the freeway embankment met nothing. Instead, I saw a line of mailboxes, crooked and old, like a forgotten rural road had been stitched into the interstate shoulder. Each mailbox door hung open, their insides black as throats. And every one of them had my name painted on it in white block letters. Patricia Sullivan. My stomach turned over so hard I had to brace a hand on the mile marker post. The metal was warm, not sun warm, body warm. A voice came from one of the open mailboxes, faint and dry, as if spoken through paper. Patricia. I jerked back, heart slamming. The voice sounded like my mother on her last voicemail before the hospice nurse took her phone away, thin, exhausted, desperate to be heard. I hadn't heard that voice in 3 years. I should have run back to the cab. I should have climbed in, locked the doors, and driven until the night blurred into dawn. Instead, I did what people do when they're starved for a person they can't get back. I leaned toward the mailbox. Imam. The wind died, not faded, died as if someone had reached out and pinched the world quiet. My own breathing sounded too loud. I could hear the faint, idle tick of my engine, the cooling metal, the distant hiss of tires on the freeway. From the mailbox, a wet swallow. Then, Pat, don't let them write you down. A shadow moved inside the box. Something long and pale, like a finger, slid forward until it touched the lip of the metal door. It wasn't a human finger, too smooth, too jointless. It dragged itself along the edge with a soft squeak like chalk on a board. I stumbled back. The mile marker bled faster, the red line thickening as if my attention fed it. Behind me, my trailer made a sound. Not the usual settling creak, not the slap of air lines. A single, deliberate knock from inside the van wall. My skin prickled. No. I spun toward my rig. The trailer doors were sealed. No reefer unit. No reason for any movement. Yet the knock came again lower, as if something inside had shifted its weight and tested the walls. Knock. My cab dome light flickered. The dash screen glitched, flashing my old login page. I'd been logged in since Reno. Now it showed an empty field, cursor blinking like a heartbeat. Enter driver name. I stared at it, cold spreading through my chest. The L didn't ask that. It knew my profile. It had my dot number, my hours, my violations. It never forgot me. Until now. The cursor blinked. From the mailboxes, the voice hissed, urgent. Don't type it. If you give it your name, it'll keep you. I backed away from the mile marker, eyes locked on my dash. The cursor blinked again, slower, as if waiting patiently. Enter driver name. My phone buzzed in my pocket. No ringtone, just a vibration that felt like a pulse against my thigh. I yanked it out, screen bright in the dark. A text from an unknown number. You stopped at 113. Identify yourself. Another text followed instantly. Failure to identify will result in recovery. My mouth went dry, recovery like I was cargo. I climbed into the cab, slammed the door, and hit the lock twice. My hands shook so bad I fumbled the shifter. I told myself it was a scam, a prank, some weird Utah roadside art project. Mile marker blood could be paint. Mailboxes could be props. But the smell of copper was inside the cab now, thick as if someone had spilled a bucket of pennies under my seat. The knock came from the trailer again. Harder, the whole rig shuddered. I threw it into gear and pulled out, tires spitting gravel, merging back onto I-80 as if the freeway could wash this off me. In my mirror, the mile marker receded. The line of mailboxes didn't. It slid alongside the shoulder at the same pace as my truck, as if the desert itself had latched onto my trailer and was being dragged. I blinked hard. The mailboxes were gone. Just scrub and rock again. My dash screen went black for a second, then lit up with a new message in plain white text. Driver name, blank. Trailer name, 113. I laughed once, sharp and humorless, because what else do you do when reality starts writing its own paperwork? Okay, I said to the empty cab. Okay, I'm Patricia. Fine, you want my name? You already have it. The air in the cab tightened, like the space had become smaller. My ears popped. The windshield glass fogged from the inside in a perfect oval right in front of my face, as if someone had exhaled against it from the passenger seat. A finger traced letters through the fog. Peter T. Then stopped, as if reconsidering. The finger continued slower. RICIA. The letters were backwards from my perspective, readable only from the outside, like a message meant for someone F. Following. My throat constricted. I stared at the passenger seat. Empty, seatbelt hanging still, no movement. The fogged letters began to bead and run, not like condensation, but like tears. The trails they left were faintly pink. I wiped the glass with my sleeve. The stain didn't come off. It soaked into the windshield like it had become part of it. Mile marker 114 passed. Normal, green sign for an upcoming exit, a cluster of lights in the distance. Civilization. Relief hit me so hard I felt dizzy. Then my ELD pinged. A new log edit request. Unusual, it displayed a proposed change. Driver name change. PATRICIASULLIVAN right arrow unassigned. Reason code unknown. I hit decline so hard my fingertip hurt. The screen blinked. Request resubmitted. I hit decline again. Request resubmitted. Over and over faster, the request popping back up as if something on the other end had a finger on the button and infinite patience. My heart pounded. Sweat broke cold on my neck. Stop, I whispered. Stop. The radio crackled, static. Then a voice slid through, smooth as oil. Driver, it said, calm and official. State your name for verification. The voice sounded like a way station operator, clipped and bored, the voice of someone who said the same sentence 1,000 times. But the frequency was wrong. It wasn't a station I knew. It was too clear, too close, like the voice was inside my speakers rather than coming from outside. I reached to turn it off. The knob spun freely, doing nothing. "Driver," the voice repeated, a hint of irritation now. "State your name." My hands tightened on the wheel until my palms ached. "No." Silence for a beat. Then softly, almost kindly, "If you do not identify yourself, you will be identified." The highway lights ahead dimmed, not the lamps, everything, as if someone had lowered the brightness on the world. The yellow lines faded to gray. The sky pressed closer. My headlights seemed weaker, the beams swallowed by darkness that had texture like velvet rubbed the wrong way. Mile marker 115 appeared. It was closer than it should have been, too soon. Then 116. Then 117. The numbers on the posts weren't just painted. They looked carved, gouged into the plastic, edges raw, and each one had a faint streak beneath it, like old dried blood. My stomach twisted. What is this? The knock from the trailer became a thud, rhythmic, like something inside was walking from front to back, testing the walls as it went. Thud, thud, thud. Each impact made the steering wheel vibrate. My mirrors shook. The trailer swayed slightly, as if the weight distribution had changed. Paper products don't shift like that. I checked my load straps in my mind, the seal, the way the dock guy had shut the doors. Everything had been normal. The voice on the radio side, "Patricia Sullivan." My blood ran cold. It hadn't asked. It had said it like a verdict. The cab air pressure gauge flickered. The needle dipped, then jumped back. My ears rang. The fog on the windshield returned, blooming in a handprint this time, 5 long fingers splayed wide, too wide to be human. The handprint pressed harder, and I heard the faint squeal of skin on glass. I swerved slightly, correcting, heart hammering. A car passed in the left lane, a sedan with bright headlights. For a second, I felt sane again, other people, other drivers, normal traffic. Then the sedan's taillights blinked out. Not turned off, vanished. The car itself dissolved into the dark like it had never been there, leaving an empty lane and the fading echo of tires that weren't making sound anymore. Panic rose in my throat, hot and choking. I forced myself to focus on the road. "Keep it together," I muttered. "Keep it together." I needed an exit, a truck stop, a way station, a human face. A sign loomed ahead, reflective green. "Next services to MILES." Under it, in smaller white letters, a line that made my stomach drop. "Name required." I took the exit anyway, because the alternative was the road itself swallowing me. The off-ramp curved into darkness. The world beyond the headlight beams was nothing. No desert, no sky, just a flat black that made the pavement look like a ribbon suspended over a void. At the bottom of the ramp was a building that shouldn't exist. No logos, no gas pumps, just a low concrete structure with a single bay door like a loading dock and a row of fluorescent lights that buzzed and flickered as if they were barely holding reality in place. A sign above the door, hand-painted, letters uneven. "Registry." I stopped at the edge of the lot, brakes hissing. The engine idled, steady and comforting. My hands trembled so badly I had to grip the wheel to stop them from shaking. The trailer thudded again. This time the sound came with a faint rustle, like paper sliding across paper. I stared at the building. A part of me wanted to reverse back up the ramp, get back on the freeway. But the ramp behind me was gone, not hidden, gone. Where it had been was a wall of dark, seamless. The world had been folded shut. The radio clicked, the same smooth voice, now almost pleased. "Welcome, Patricia Sullivan. Please complete your registration." The building door opened with a slow, hydraulic sigh. Warm air rolled out, smelling of ink and wet cardboard and something sweetly rotten. I didn't move. My chest felt tight, like a belt cinched around my ribs. I could feel my heartbeat in my fingertips. From the open doorway, someone stepped into the light. A woman in a reflective vest, clipboard in hand, hair pulled back tight. She looked like a dock worker, like a scale attendant, like someone who belonged in any roadside facility. Ordinary, tired, efficient. Then she smiled, and her teeth were too many. Not sharp, just crowded, like her mouth had been packed with extra rows that didn't fit. "Patricia," she called, voice friendly, "we've been expecting you." I swallowed. "Who are you?" "Registry clerk," she said, as if that explained everything. She lifted her clipboard. "We just need your full legal name and a signature, then you can go." Behind her in the open doorway, I saw shelves. Not products, not snacks. File boxes, hundreds of them stacked to the ceiling, each labeled in black marker with a name. Some names I recognized from old CB chatter, missing drivers, guys who'd vanished en routes and became cautionary tales. Some names had been crossed out, scribbled over so hard the cardboard was torn. The clerk's pen clicked. "Come on, honey, don't make this difficult. You already stopped at 113, you're in the system." My pulse roared in my ears. "I'm not signing anything." Her smile widened, stretching her cheeks in a way that looked painful. "If you don't sign, you'll be unassigned." The word hit me like a punch. Unassigned, like the eld request, like being erased. The trailer thudded again, but now it wasn't just one spot. It was multiple impacts, rapid, like dozens of hands pounding from inside. Thud, 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 thud. The van walls bowed outward slightly, metal flexing. The hinges on the trailer doors shivered. The seal bar rattled. "Paper doesn't do that." The clerk's eyes flicked to my trailer, and for the first time her expression showed something like hunger. "Your load's restless," she murmured. "They always are when the paperwork isn't done." I whispered before I could stop myself. She tilted her head. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder. "Names," she said softly. "Drivers bring them in without knowing, names that fell off people, names that got left behind at accidents, names that got stolen, names that don't belong to anyone anymore." My stomach turned. I thought of the license at the mile marker, face down, name blurred. The clerk stepped forward, and the air around her shimmered, like heat over asphalt. Up close I could see that her reflective vest wasn't reflective tape. It was strips of laminated paper, cut thin and glued on, each strip printed with tiny text, names, thousands of them, overlapping like newsprint. She held out the clipboard. The top page was blank except for a single line. "Print name." Below it, a signature line. My hands clenched into fists. "No." The clerk sighed, almost disappointed. "Then we'll take it." The fluorescent lights flickered off. For a second, total darkness. Then they flickered on again, and the clerk was gone. But the clipboard was on my passenger seat. The pen lay across it, angled like an invitation. My cab door locks clicked, once, twice. The handles went stiff. I tried them, no give. The windows wouldn't roll down. The engine wouldn't rev higher than idle, as if someone had put a governor on my fear. The radio voice hummed content. Please print your name. The fog returned on the windshield, but this time it wasn't a handprint. It was a face pressed from the outside, nose flattened, mouth open, eyes wide and desperate. The face was mine. But older, thinner, eyes sunken like I hadn't slept in weeks. The mouth moved against the glass, shaping words I couldn't hear. I leaned closer, trembling. The older me mouthed, "Don't." The radio voice sharpened. "Do not listen to unassigned echoes." The face on the windshield began to slide downward slowly, leaving a smear of pink condensation like a tongue dragged across glass. As it slid, the skin seemed to thin, stretch, becoming translucent, until the skull shape underneath showed like a bruise. I gagged, jerking back. From the trailer came a new sound, tearing. Not metal, paper. A long rip, followed by another, like sheets being pulled apart. The pounding stopped, replaced by the steady, methodical sound of something inside shredding my load with careful fingers. Rip, rip, rip. The smell of ink flooded the cab, sharp and nauseating. My eyes watered. The LED screen flashed again. Driver name, PATRICIASULLIVAN. Status pending. A new line appeared beneath it. Payment due, one name. My throat tightened. You want my name. The radio voice purred. We want what you are called. We want the label that makes why. Oh, real to other people. Without it, you are light in fog. Without it, you can be filed. I stared at the clipboard. My hands hovered over the pen. Signing felt like surrender. Not signing felt like being erased. My brain raced, searching for a third option, something truckers live on, workarounds, loopholes, the gap between rules. Names. It wanted a name. Not necessarily mine. My eyes flicked to the glove box. My registration papers, old receipts, my mother's hospice paperwork I'd never thrown away, folded and worn in my visor. My hands shook as I reached up and yanked the paper down. Hospice intake form, her name printed in neat black letters. EVELYN-SULLIVAN. My chest tightened. No, I'm not. The trailer ripped again, louder. The van rocked. Something inside slammed once against the front wall, hard enough to make my cab shudder. The radio voice grew impatient. Print your name. I put the hospice form on the clipboard. My fingers gripped the pen so hard it squeaked. I didn't have time to think about morality, about what it meant, about whether you could pay a thing like this with someone else's identity. I only knew I wanted to remain a person when the sun came up. I wrote, EVELYN-SULLIVAN. The ink looked too dark, too wet. It sank into the paper like it was drinking. The cab air loosened. My ears popped again. The engine revved when I pressed the pedal as if permission had been restored. The radio voice sighed, satisfied. Payment received. Outside, the building lights dimmed. The open doorway yawned wider. I heard paper rustling from inside like 1,000 files shifting. The windshield face, older me, stopped sliding. Its eyes widened, terror sharp and immediate. It mouthed something frantic. I leaned close, heart hammering. It mouthed, you gave her away. The face vanished, leaving only a faint pink smear. My stomach dropped. Mom. The mile marker number appeared on my dash screen, where the trip meter should have been. Then it changed. Counting backward. I shoved the truck into gear and gunned it, tires squealing on the lot's rough pavement. The cab door locks clicked open with a cheerful little sound like a car unlocking at the mall. The world outside the headlights thickened, then thinned, and suddenly the off-ramp was back, curving up toward the freeway as if it had never been missing. I barreled up it and merged onto I-80, chest heaving. Mile marker 118 passed. Normal, white post, black numbers, no blood. Relief tried to settle in my bones. Then my phone rang. Caller ID, Mom. My hands went numb. I stared at it, unable to breathe. It rang again and again. I didn't answer, I couldn't. A voicemail notification popped up without the call ending, as if time had folded. One new voicemail. I clicked it because not knowing felt worse. Static hissed, then my mother's voice, clearer than it had been in years, warm and close as if she sat in my passenger seat. Pat, she said gently, I'm at the registry. They told me you signed me in. I don't remember dying anymore. Isn't that funny? My throat closed. No. Her voice continued, soft, confused. There are shelves, honey, so many shelves. They keep asking me to spell my name again and again like they can't get it right. Every time I say it, it gets shorter. A pause, a shaky inhale. Patricia, I'm scared. I can feel letters falling off me. In the background, I heard the fluorescent buzz, louder now, and the faint scratch of a pen. My mother whispered, almost too quiet to hear. Don't stop at 113 again. If you do, you won't remember how to call yourself. The voicemail ended. My vision blurred with sudden tears. I wiped them away angrily, because crying doesn't help at 70 miles an hour in the dark. The trailer behind me went quiet. No more ripping, no more pounding. Too quiet. I checked my mirrors. The trailer doors were still shut, the seal intact. But the reflective tape along the trailer's side had changed. It wasn't the standard red and white pattern anymore. In my headlights, it shimmered with tiny black letters, like printed names layered on top of each other, crawling along the length of the van like ants. And near the front corner, right where my mirror could catch it, one name stood out in bold, as if freshly written. Evelyn Sullivan. Then, as I watched, a letter faded. Evelyn Sullivan became Evelyn Sulliva. Then Evelyn Sulliv. Then Evelyn Sulli. The name shrinking, bleeding letters into the night. My hands clenched the wheel until my wrists hurt. I'm sorry, I whispered to the dark, to the road, to a woman filing away one missing letter at a time. I'm sorry. Ahead, mile marker 119 rose out of the darkness. For a split second, in my headlights, the numbers looked like they were melting. And underneath them, faint as a watermark, I saw another number trying to show through. I didn't stop. I didn't slow. I kept driving, because I could feel my own name loosening in my chest like a tooth ready to fall out, and somewhere behind me. In a building that shouldn't exist, a clerk with too many teeth was opening a box with my mother's almost name on it, making room on the shelf for what would come next.